Chapter 31:22. Of course it's painful, but his life was saved by the little sister again and again. Without Mayan, there would be no Su-Zi in the world who has recovered from his heart disease. For a long time, he couldn't do anything for the little sister. Now, what's the harm in exchanging his life for the little sister's? Boom! The deafening sound of thunder resounds in his ears again. Su-Zi knows that he won't be able to endure this god's thunder anymore. The black gas around his body is getting thicker and thicker. The originally delicate and handsome youth's face is tainted with a bit of breathtaking beauty. But his smile is still so warm. Little sister, you must live well. Must fart. Chi Xiao Wang, you bastard, if you mess around again, I'll spank your ass. Mayan grits her teeth and curses, raising her hand to grab his chest. She grabs a red figure in the air. Before Su-Zi can clearly see what that red figure is, he's already slapped down from the air. Senior, take care of this kid for me. Don't let him die by any means. And everything in the Xiojin continent. I'll leave it all to you. The purple gold god's thunder of heaven's punishment really falls on Mayan this time. The sea of fireflies surrounding her were instantly smashed into pieces. Mayan fiercely spits out a mouthful of blood and heavily falls on the mountain peak. One more inch forward, and it's the bottomless, refining god abyss. It's the refining god abyss that can shatter an immortal's body and consign them to eternal damnation. Yin Ruhan grabs Su-Zi, who's falling from the air, and throws him aside. Her whole body quickly soars up and rushes towards a girl on the mountain peak. The other people of the Xiaoyao school, including Chu Moli in the wheelchair, recklessly rush up. Faster. A little faster. Little sister can't die. I beg you, she can't die. In the Tian Mo Chin's space. Chi Huang awkwardly rolls on the grass, but he doesn't have the time to tidy up his messy clothes and long hair. He suddenly turns his head, his crimson eyes looking outside the space. He roars at the top of his lungs. Jun Mayan, this is the last god's thunder of heaven's punishment. Endure it, you must endure it. His voice was hoarse and trembling, as if he had used up all of his strength and begged for the humblest thing in his life. Jun Mayan, I beg you don't die. Don't let me return to the endless darkness. Gujajiji. Brother Red Pants, what's wrong with you? Hearing the crisp chirping in his ears, Chi Huang whipped his head around, his crimson eyes fixed on the little chick in front of him. It was like a ferocious beast that had been starving for 10 days and 10 nights had finally found its prey. Coo! Chick! The ahog on little chick's head twitched as it took a step back in fear. Rumble! The last heavenly thunder sounded. Muyin only feels a dazzling white light explode in front of her. She saw the people of the Xiaoyao sect madly rushing towards her. He heard Seven Brilliance's howls and cries. She could even hear the clamor of the Dark Flame Army, Beautiful City Army, and Liang Chun Army from afar. But all of this was getting further and further away from her. Chi Huang, I'm sorry. It seems that I won't be able to survive the last bolt of lightning. Xiao Bao, Di Ming Ju. Just as the hoarse murmur came out, suddenly she heard a Guji sound in her ears. A fluffy yellow ball rolled out in a sorry state, crying and whimpering. Chick, chick, chick. Mama, mama. Brother Red Pants is bullying me. Chapter 31:23. While complaining, the furry dumpling rolls around in Muyan's arms and bumps its head into her chest. Suddenly, a ball of light flashed on Muyan's chest, and then something gradually appeared. In a trance, Muyan only saw 4 words: floating light, jade key. Floating light, jade key? What was that? Jade keys are divided into cloudy sky jade key, flickering light jade key, and spirit ruin jade key. What you have now is the cloudy sky jade key, which can open low-level Tianguang ruins, but not mid-level and high-level Tianguang ruins. First host, choose the floating light jade key. I must choose the floating light jade key. Muyin suddenly remembers. It was the special reward she had obtained in the Tianguang ruins, the floating light jade key. But why would the floating light jade key appear now? Rumble. At this moment, the heavenly punishment thunder finally struck down. The peak of the mountain that Muyin was on collapsed, and her body, which was already powerless, fell towards the refining god abyss along with the crushed rocks. Little junior sister. The 6 people from the Xiaoyao school wanted to jump down as well, but they were held back by an invisible force. They could only let out helpless and desperate roars. However, at this moment, a resplendent silver light shone on the falling girl's body, slowly wrapping her within. Coo, coo, coo. The little chick on the girl's shoulder rolled over. It tilted its head towards the 6 people on top of the precipice and waved its short claws. In the next moment, both Mu Yin and Ing He disappeared into the light. Xiaoxin continent. Bang! After a loud sound, Mu Luyun and his subordinates guarding the entrance of the heaven-reaching stairway were sent flying by the huge shockwave and fainted. After a long time, Mu Luyun slowly woke up. Mu Luyun's expression kept changing as he looked at the entrance to the heaven stairway, which had already collapsed and disappeared. His eyes were filled with shock and bewilderment. Priest Luyun, what's going on? When the subordinate woke up and saw this scene, he was dumbfounded. How could the stairway to heaven be destroyed? Apart from the ancient war, such a thing has never happened before. Mu Luyun was silent for a long time before he muttered. That's because someone used the power of the law in the cultivation continent. What? The subordinate suspected that he had misheard. The power of law, and on the cultivation continent? Was Priest Luyun joking with him? Mu Luyun also could not help but raise his voice slightly as he exclaimed, able to grasp the power of laws with the body of a virtual immortal. How many years has it been since I've seen such a monstrous genius? It's a pity. I was too stupid. Priest, what do you mean? Using the power of laws in the cultivation continent is simply courting death. So what if he was a genius? In the end, he still couldn't escape the punishment of the heavenly Tao. So, that person, the Shun musician who triggered the 9 stars in the moon, is already dead? Then are we still going to guard the spatial barrier? Mu Luyun shook his head regretfully, but his eyes were cold. There's no need. A ghost that has already turned into ashes is not worthy of our master's attention. Let's go. Polar domain. Sunglasses are fine. What nonsense are you talking about? How could the ladder to heaven be destroyed? Sunglasses Chung still had a lot of scratches on his face. He immediately said with grief and indignation, How would I know if you ask me? Just as the spatial barrier passage was about to be opened, it suddenly triggered a big explosion. How many treasures in my temple that are used to guide the laws of space were all fucking destroyed? Jun Shang, you must compensate me. Chapter 31:24. Diming Ju tightly clutches the void spirit ring in his hand. Feeling the vigorous life force from the ring, his heart slowly calmed down. The ethereal spirit ring wouldn't lie. Muyan was still alive and well. All he needed to do now was to find her. Diming Ju closes his eyes. Do you know why the stairway to heaven was destroyed? Sunglasses Chung knitted his brows and said with some hesitation, Because the spatial barrier passage is only half built, I'm not too sure about the situation on the cultivation continent. But I seem to feel the fluctuations of the power of laws, as well as the aura of the heavenly punishment thunder. Could it be that someone used the power of laws in the cultivation continent and was punished by the heavenly punishment thunder? This is impossible, right? Which freak can use the power of law in the cultivation continent? There was dead silence in the hall. Everyone was frowning. Sunglasses Chung felt that the atmosphere was a little off. He swallowed and asked tentatively, Could it be that someone can really do it? No. Then wasn't she courting death by doing this? The heavenly punishment thunder. Even the invincible golden body of Debiai Temple would be smashed into pieces. Elder Chong hurriedly said, King Shua, shut up. Sunglasses Chung looks at Di Ming Ju's complexion and promptly covers his mouth. Di Ming Ju's hands tightly clench into fists. After a long while, he hoarsely says, How long will it take to rebuild the stairway to heaven? Rebuild the stairway to heaven? Di Mingju, are you crazy? Seeing Di Mingju coldly looking over, he shrunk his neck and tentatively gave a number, 30 years? 3 months. Fuck, what a joke. Di Mingju, you might as well kill me. Hey, Dimingju, don't go Let's discuss again. If 30 years isn't enough, 3 years should be fine, right? Woo, Junshang, I was wrong. I beg you to give me a bit more time. Dimingju climbs the highest mountain peak in the polar domain. Only then does he release Xiaobao. I'm sorry. He gently stroked Xiaobao's head, his voice indescribably hoarse. Daddy is going to break his promise. Xiaobao's sparkling eyes immediately dimmed. The expression on his little face was so sad and heartbroken. Xiaobao still can't see Mother? Dimingju is silent and doesn't speak. Is Mother alive and well? Dimingju nods without hesitation. He knew that his yin-yin was still alive. No matter where she was, his yin-yin would live well. Xiaobao reaches out a small hand and caresses Dimingju's face, his voice carrying a sobbing tone. Daddy, don't be sad. We will definitely be able to see Mother again. At this moment, the softness and bitterness in Dimingju's heart burst out at the same time. There was a momentary warmth in her eyes. He suddenly reached out and pulled the little body into his arms. Daddy promises you that in 3 months at most, I'll definitely let you see Mother. Xiaobao nodded heavily and wiped his tears away with his sleeve. Xiaobao believes in Daddy. During these 3 months, Xiaobao will enter the pocket world to continue cultivating. Dimingju rubs his head, softly saying, all right. Just at this moment, a figure comes galloping over from afar, landing in front of Dimingju and Xiaobao. Greetings, Lord. Greetings, young master. Dimingju turns his head to look at the newcomer and casually nods his head, indicating for him to get up. Xiaobao's voice still carries a sobbing tone, but his little face is taut as he shouts, Uncle Defeating Armies. Defeating Armies stands up, his gaze roaming between Dimingju and Xiaobao. Is something the matter? Chapter 31:25. Defeating Armies bowed his head and said, Imperial Monarch, this subordinate would like to request a period of leave from you. Dimingju raises an eyebrow. Ask for leave? What do you want to do? Defeating Armies takes a deep breath, and only after a long while does he say in a low voice, this subordinate wants to suppress his cultivation and make a trip to the Yinwu continent with his real body. Yinwu continent? This time, even Dimingju reveals an astonished expression. Xiaobao tilted his head and looked at Defeating Armies in confusion. Yinwu continent. Isn't that the place where he was born? What is Uncle Pajun doing there? Defeating Armies looks at Xiaobao, then looks at Dimingju, wanting to say something but hesitating. He wanted to say something, but in the end he swallowed the words that were at the tip of his tongue. He hangs his head and says, there are some matters that this subordinate needs to go to the Yinwu continent to verify. Please grant my wish, Lord. Cultivation continent, Heavenly Phoenix mountain range. The thunderclouds in the sky had already dissipated at some point. The sky in the east was once again turning bright. The 6 disciples of the Xiao Yao school were still lying on the precipice of the mountain peak in a daze. Little junior sister didn't seem to fall into the refining god abyss. He wasn't struck by the divine lightning. What is that light? Chu Moli slowly exhaled. That's the floating light, Jade Key. Flickering light, Jade Key? What is that? Chu Moli's expression was also a little dazed. When he heard the question, it was a long while before he muttered, that is the special Jade Key of the heavenly light ruins of the floating island. It is also the key that can forcibly construct a spatial barrier passage. His voice suddenly stopped, and he couldn't help but chuckle. Little junior sister, how many more surprises do you have for us? The remaining 5 looked at each other in dismay. They had no idea what this mysterious third senior brother was talking about. But there was one thing he understood. Is junior sister all right? Chu Moli sighed. Of course, the person who can kill Jun Mayan in this world might not even be born yet. So little junior sister went to the floating island? Damn, our cultivation is only at the leaving aperture stage. We can't go to the cultivation continent or the sky floating island. Yin Ruhan wiped away the blood and sweat on her face and revealed a faint smile. As long as I'm alive, we'll be able to meet again. Yes, as long as they were alive, they could always meet again. Furthermore, it's just the crossing calamity stage. I want to break through within a year. Fourth senior sister, you're too slow. I want 8 months. Get lost, then I'll give you 6 months. I have 5 months. Chumoli took a look at the devastated Heavenly Phoenix mountain range, as well as the surging human heads that he could see from the summit of the mountain. They were the Dark Flame Army, Beautiful City Army, and Good Dawn Army that refused to leave. Also, everything on the cultivation continent is in your hands. He was still thinking about the girl's shout before the lightning struck. Chumoli suddenly felt a headache coming on. He held his forehead and revealed a bitter smile. So, junior sister, just how big of a mess did you leave for us? If the four major legions found out that the people they had been loyal to had disappeared, 3 months. Chumoli suddenly said, break through and undergo tribulation in 3 months, then go to the floating island. Hula. The 5 of them simultaneously cast their gazes towards him. Their gazes were filled with shock, as if they didn't recognize Chumoli at all. The laziest, most Buddhist, and most inattentive third brother actually wanted to cultivate diligently. The sun wouldn't rise from the west today, right? Chumoli didn't pay attention to them. Instead, he turned his head to look down the mountain and smiled lightly. Yinrahan, on the other hand, understood his meaning. She slowly said, the cultivation continent is very vast, but it's already not enough for us to soar. Or do you want to continue wasting time here and let junior sister leave us further and further behind? Absolutely not. The unfettered 7 will advance and retreat together and never abandon each other. Luo, you clenched her fists tightly and said hoarsely, I originally didn't want to take revenge, but I definitely don't want to let off that person who harmed eldest senior brother and took away master's life. Lung Yuma said, my mother and grandfather are both on the floating island. I also want to go to the floating island to take a look. Qin Jiu lowered his eyes. After a long while, he said hoarsely, word by word, go to floating island. Yinru Han said, all right, then it's decided. 3 months. 3 months later, we will meet up with junior sister on the floating island. The 6 of them looked at the vast rivers and mountains below the mountain peak. Then, they stepped onto their flying swords and sped away. There will always be a time for flowers to bloom and wilt, and there will always be a time for clouds to gather and disperse. After this long separation, they will return to the same destination. The mountains will not change, and the rivers will always flow. There will always be a day when time flies and the blue sea turns into mulberry fields. The people who have been separated will meet again. Chapter 31:26. Cultivation Continent, Linglong Island. Jiyu, what are you doing in that direction? The one who was stopped was a little girl with a double-ring bun. Upon hearing this, he quickly said, greetings, Sister Hanyu. It was Deputy Island Master Huang who ordered me to go to Huaqing Palace to invite young Master Li over. Hearing the 3 words, young Master Li, Hanyu's expression obviously stiffened. He had a hesitant expression on his face. Jiyu asked in confusion, Sister Hanyu, what's wrong? Is there a problem? No, nothing. Hanyu glanced in the direction of Huaqing Hall with alarm and vigilance before forcing a smile. Since it's Deputy Island Master Huang's order, just do it. After a pause, she couldn't help but add, go and come back quickly. Don't delay. As Jiyu walked into the clear Flower Palace Hall, Hanyu's fearful and worried expression still flashed through her mind. What was in the pure Flower Palace that could make Sister Hanyu so afraid? Could it be young Master Li? Jiyu had just been transferred to the main island from the periphery of Linglong Island 2 years ago. As for the background of this young Master Li, he was completely clueless. She only knew that young Master Li was very important to young Master Li, and she usually did not allow anyone to approach young Master Li's Pure Flower Palace. Jiyu walked around the main hall of the Clear Flower Palace, but she didn't find even a shadow of a person. The entire Clear Flower Palace was incomparably luxurious and magnificent, but it was empty inside. There wasn't even a servant to serve. Jiyu cautiously shouted for a long time in the hall, but she didn't get any response. Behind Clear Flower Palace was a flower garden that was twice the size of the palace. It was filled with all kinds of colorful flowers. Some were as red as blood, some were as brilliant as the sun, and some were as blue as the sky. Ji couldn't find anyone in the hall, so she unknowingly walked into the flower bed. Looking at the scene in front of him, he was stunned. So beautiful, even if the Linglong Island itself was as beautiful as a fairyland. However, Ji was still shocked by the scene in front of her. As she strolled among the flowers, her mouth and nose were filled with the most fragrant fragrance. Her round little face couldn't help but reveal an intoxicated expression. Suddenly, Jiyu's footsteps came to an abrupt halt, her eyes blurred and dreamy as she gazed into the distance. Amidst the colorful and bustling scene, a young man was looking down at a small flower with a gentle expression on his face. The young man wore a spotless white robe, but his eyes were covered by a red ribbon that was even more glaring than fresh blood, completely covering his eyes. Where the red silk could not reach, the tall nose bridge was like a snowy ridge, and the skin was cold and white like jade. Further down were the light pink lips that were slightly hooked. Her expression was bashful and gentle. He was like a young boy who had just experienced his first awakening of love. Jiyu's heart was beating like a drum, and for a moment, her entire mind seemed to be bewitched by this fairy-like youth. Such a thought unconsciously appeared in his mind. If the young man was looking at her with such a gentle expression, and not a flower, how many times would that be? As Jiyu thought of this, her eyes unconsciously fell on the flower that the youth was taking care of. Only then did she realize that the flower was very peculiar. Surrounded by a sea of colorful flowers, there was only this fragile and small blue flower that looked like it could break at any moment. Moreover, the appearance of this flower was also very strange. The entire plant seemed to be carved out of ice crystals. The roots were translucent, and as she got closer, she could see the gurgling juice inside. And at the top of the branches and leaves, there was a small light pink flower bud that was gently swaying in the wind. Chapter 31:27. Sparkling star-like lights floated in the air as the flower bud swayed. It created a kind of dreamy beauty. Ji was stunned and couldn't help but exclaim, "What a beautiful flower!" Even if it was just a flower bud, it was already so dazzling. If it were to bloom, what kind of peerless beauty would it be? Linglong Island was also full of flowers. How come she had never seen it before? Jiyu's cry naturally startled the youth, but it also seemed to startle the flower that was swaying gently in the wind. Then, she watched helplessly as black spots began to appear on the pink flower bud. More and more, densely packed until the entire flower branch was covered. Finally, the flower withered. The youth in the red silk looked at his empty palm in a daze. The gentleness on his face turned into sadness and sadness. In the end, I still couldn't succeed. Jiyu panicked. How could this be? She faintly felt that it might be because of her. Seeing the youth look at her, she panicked so much that tears almost flowed out. I'm sorry, I don't know why it's like this. I shouldn't have said anything." The youth's expression was still sad, but he still comforted her with a smile. "It's not your fault. This flower is not easy to raise. I've raised it for hundreds of years and still haven't been able to make it bloom. What's the matter?" Jiyu stuttered. It was Deputy Island Master Huang who asked me to come to Huaqing Palace to invite young Master Li over, Miss. Miss has something to say. "Oh, what's the matter, sister?" The youth tilted his head, revealing a puzzled expression. Jiyu was startled. Was the youth in front of her the master of Huaqing Palace, Li Weiran? But she had never heard that young Master Li was blind. Moreover, the entire Linglong Island seemed to fear young Master Li. But the young Master Li in front of her was clearly such a gentle youth. Just as she was thinking about this, a glaring red suddenly came closer. The man's gentle voice drifted into her ears. "Do you like flowers?" I do." "Then how about this one for you?" His slender fingers were currently holding a flower that was as dazzling as the red silk on his face, and he handed it to Jiyu. Jiyu's round face suddenly flushed red, and the expression in her eyes was both shy and happy. This? How can this be? How can I accept young Master Li's things? The youth chuckled and said, but I feel that this flower is as beautiful as you. So, I really want to give it to you. In the end, Ji Yu couldn't resist the shyness and anticipation in her heart. She reached out and carefully took the flowers. After giving away the flowers, the young man seemed to be satisfied. He pursed his lips into a smile and turned to leave. Ji Yu blankly stared at his back. Her face was blushing, her eyes full of shyness and tenderness. He couldn't help but lower his head and sniff the flower in his hand. Bang! A loud sound rang out, causing the entire flower bed to shake. Ji Yu let out a shrill scream and covered her face with her hands. Hot blood mixed with minced meat flowed from her fingertips. Her other hand had already been bitten off at the wrist, revealing the ghastly white bones. The delicate flower that she had just held in her hand had already changed its appearance. The tender petals were blown to pieces. A ferocious mouth emerged from where the stamen had been, and it was chewing on something. Chapter 31:28. Fresh blood dripped down from the sawtooth. Haha, what a pity. She only bit off her hand and nose. I thought she would bite off half her head. But no matter how many times I see this scene, it makes me feel refreshed. Huang Shouchuan rushed in from outside and saw the scene in the flower bed. Li Weiran, what are you doing? Li Weiran tilted his head and smiled. Oh, it's Deputy Island Master Huang. Why are you so angry? Isn't she just a little girl? If she's dead, then she's dead. Are you going to hold it against me? Huang Shouchuan glared at him and wanted to yell at him, but he held it in. Miss hasn't been in a good mood recently. She's even sick. You better behave yourself and stop causing trouble. Li Weiran pouted and waved his hand in the direction of the flower bed. In the next moment, all the flowers started to roll like a huge wave. Not long after, a hole appeared in the ground, and the moaning Ji Yu was sucked in. The Ji Yu screamed in fear. Save me, I don't want to die. Save me. The mournful voice was finally buried. Another fertilizer. Does it taste good? You guys have to enjoy it. Li Weiran caressed the red silk on the bridge of his nose, revealing an incomparably gentle and shy expression. All right, let's go see my sister. He turned around and looked at Huang Shouchuan like a young man. I haven't seen my sister in a long time, too. Huang Shouchuan glared at him in disgust and said coldly, Come with me. Fian Palace. Yu Yanran leaned against the bed, her lips pale and her expression sad. There was a slight worry between her brows. Seeing Huang Shouchuan and Li Weiran enter, she smiled. Sister, I heard you're in a bad mood. Did someone piss you off? I'll go kill him for you, okay? Li Weiran laid on the bed, his chin resting on his crossed arms. His eyes were covered by the red silk, but he was facing Yu Yanran's face as if his vision was not affected at all. When Yu Yanran heard this, her expression became even sadder. Unknowingly, tears rolled down her cheeks. She shook her head and forced a smile. I'm fine. It's just that I'm having some trouble leveling up recently. Don't worry, Weiran. Miss, how could you be fine? Huang Shouchuan clenched his teeth and said resentfully, after the calamity of collapsing skies. Many small families have received an invitation from the polar domain to distribute the latest Heaven Spirit detoxification pill to them. Only our nimble island hasn't sent a single person here. If one was bitten by a low-level poltergeist ghost, one only needed to consume an ordinary Heaven Spirit detoxification pill to prevent the mutation infection. But this time, many of the poltergeist ghosts that swarmed in through the cracks were high-level. Being bitten by these poltergeist ghosts might not be infected in a short period of time, but as time went on, it would slowly mutate and eventually become a monster that was neither human nor ghost. As for the high-level swan poison, only the newly refined Heaven Spirit detoxification pill of the polar domain could cure it. Moreover, the polar domain had never been secretive in this aspect. Almost on the second day after the poltergeist was dealt with, the various clans in the polar domain were notified to collect their antidote pills. After this battle, all the sects and clans of the polar domain were grateful to their emperor, swearing their loyalty to him. They were also proud and rejoiced that they could become a member of the polar domain. But such rejoicing and pride did not belong to the nimble island. Chapter 31:29. The people of the polar domain seem to have deliberately forgotten about the island of Linglong, and no one came to pay attention to them. Huang Shouchuan said hatefully, "Miss, when you learned that the emperor was in trouble, you disregarded your own safety and rushed to the hidden abyss to save him." His advice to the god monarch was for his own good. But what about him? For the sake of a mortal woman from the Xiozhen continent, for the sake of a Shun musician remnant, they actually treat you like this. Such an ungrateful and fickle person. Why do you still miss him and grieve for him? Yi Yanran hurriedly says, "Big brother Huang, don't talk nonsense. The emperor is not that kind of person. Cough, cough. He was just bewitched by that Shun musician remnant. 1,000 years ago, we learned how sinister and ruthless the methods of the Shun musicians are, and it is impossible to guard against them. If Di Jun knows Jun Mayan's true colors, he will definitely wake up and understand my intentions." Sister just said that Di Mingju was bewitched by the remnants of the Shun musicians. Li Weiron's deep voice suddenly interjects, "Is it true?" Yi Yanran's eyes were red. She bit her lips and refused to speak. However, Huang Shouchuan gnashed his teeth and said, not only was he captivated, he was practically head over heels for that foxy charmer. Knowing full well that he was a remnant of the Shun musicians, he still went all out to protect and conceal it. Why doesn't the emperor think about how deep the enmity between the Shun musicians and all the sects and families of the Xiozhen continent is? If this woman becomes stronger, what kind of carnage will she bring in the end? The corners of Li Weiron's lips curled up. His voice was soft and gentle, like a young man talking in his sleep. This Shun musician remnant is called Jun Mayan, right? Is she still in the Xiozhen continent? Why don't I go meet her on behalf of my sister? Yu Yanran shook her head and said, "Weiran, you must not go. Shun musicians have always been crafty, sinister, and cunning. Sister is afraid that you will be at a disadvantage." Before Li Weiran could say anything, Huang Shouchuan sighed. "I also want to seek justice for Miss, but for some reason, there's a problem with the passage in the sky barrier. The heaven stairway leading to this place from the cultivation continent is broken. It would not be easy to go to the cultivation continent in a short time, unless..." Huang Shouchuan paused and lowered his head to look at Li Weiran, waiting for him to continue. "Unless what?" However, the young man whose face was mostly covered by the red silk merely tilted his head. His light pink lips curled into a smile, as if he was mocking him. Huang Shouchuan was so angry that he clenched his teeth. His disgust for this person deepened. But on the surface, he still said in a friendly tone, "Do you still remember the soul-chasing curse that I asked you to use?" "Oh." Li Weiran raised his head excitedly. "Back then, I was so busy nurturing my flower that I didn't even have time to look at the soul shadow that I took out. Could it be that the soul-chasing curse was placed on that June?" "June what?" "Oh, that's right. Is it from Jun Mayan?" Huang Shouchuan says, "That's not it, but the person who was cast with the soul-chasing curse had contact with Jun Mayan. As long as young Master Li is willing to expend your soul essence to track her, I'm sure you'll be able to find Jun Mayan, kill her, and avenge Miss." Li Weiran looked at Yu Yanran and asked innocently, "Sister, do you want me to help you kill Mayan?" Chapter 31:30. Li Weiran nods as he gets up, beaming, "I understand. Sister, rest assured, you saved me when I was on the verge of death. As long as it's your wish, Weiran will definitely fulfill it." He waves his hand, turning and stepping out of Fian Palace, the corners of his mouth curling up again. "Di Mingju Jun Mayan? Really interesting." When Li Weiran is far away, Huang Shouchuan says with a calm face, "Li Weiran just killed another maid." Yu Yanran frowns, wanting to say something. In the end, she sighs, "Bury her well, and give her parents some compensation." This subordinate understands. It's just that Miss Li Weiran is temperamental, ruthless, and ruthless. His background is so. If he stays on Linglong Island, he will be a disaster. How about after we get rid of Jun Mayan, we hand him over to... Huang Shouchuan's second half of the sentence is very soft, almost inaudible. But Yu Yanran quickly understands what he means. She slightly frowns. Her expression is one of reluctance and pity, with a faint trace of fear and disgust. In the end, she doesn't say anything. Woman, there's actually a woman in the gravel hill. Brother, this woman's skin is so tender. Let's drag her back, cut her into pieces, and marinate her. We can eat for a few days. Idiot, is there a hole in your brain? Didn't you see that this woman's appearance is the best of the best, and you're actually thinking of eating? Boo-hoo, but I'm really hungry. Idiot, as long as we sell this woman to the ghost fair, do we still have to worry about not being able to eat and drink? Mayan painfully opens her eyes as she hears the noise and the pain in her head that's like being pricked by needles. What she sees is a barren land of gravel and dust. If she breathes a little too heavily, there'll be smoke and dust choking her nose. Where am I? Did she survive the heavenly punishment? Thinking about it, Mayan finds that her current situation is not good. She's tied up with a strong rope, thrown on a simple stretcher, ready to be dragged forward. As for her dantian, she doesn't know if it was damaged by the heavenly punishment or overconsumption. At this moment, it was completely exhausted. When he tried to circulate his spiritual power, he felt a burning pain in his dantian. It took a long time for him to condense a little bit of it. Moreover, whether it's the surrounding spiritual power or internal force, it's really thin to the extreme. It's even worse than the Yanwu continent. Brother, look, the woman seems to be awake. Mu Yin follows the voice and raises her head, only to see a dark-skinned little boy dressed in rags. At this time, he is holding his finger in his mouth, his pair of green eyes staring at Mu Yin, swallowing saliva from time to time. It was as if she wasn't a person in his eyes, but a delicious dish. Beside the little boy was a tall, but equally bony man. Seeing that Mu Yin was looking at him, the man coughed lightly and avoided her gaze. Miss, don't blame us. In this world, we have to first ensure that we can survive. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for appearing at Gravel Hill. Shattered Stone Hill? The man was about to reply when he suddenly heard a shout coming from afar. Isn't that the idiot Guo Erping and his brother? Guo Erping, you and your brother have pretty good luck today. What strange beast did you hunt? Let us have a look. Chapter 31:31. I say, Guo Erping, you didn't get scared by the strange beast today, did you? As they spoke, several figures approached. Mu Yin found that the spiritual power and internal force in her dantian were still slowly recovering, but the process was somewhat painful. Of course, Mu Yin didn't care about this pain at all, and she knew that this pain was actually the self-healing process of the dantian. So she simply stopped struggling. Instead, she observed the surrounding environment and these people with great interest. The more she looked, the more strange Mu Yin felt, because there's almost no fluctuation of spiritual power around these people. In other words, they weren't cultivators but mortals. But it was a bit inaccurate to say that they were mortals, because they were moving very fast. On the uneven, rugged gravel road, they were moving as if they were flying. It was almost comparable to her own speed when she was a pre-celestial in the Yanwu continent. And although these people were all thin and small, the muscles attached to their hands and feet were extremely explosive. With a casual step, they could break a hard rock. Hiss! Brother Chong, come look. It's not a strange beast, it's a girl. What a hot girl. My God, I've never seen such a beautiful woman in my life. How long has it been since the Gravel Hill saw an adult woman? What's more, such a superb one. The leader was a young man called Brother Chong, and he looked shifty-eyed. At this time, his eyes seemed to be glued to Mu Yin, and he didn't even notice that his saliva was dripping down. Only when he was pushed by the younger brother next to him did he wake up. He immediately shouted, Guo Erping, I want this woman. I'll exchange 3 sluggish beasts for you. The silly little boy still hadn't spoken. The tall man next to him coldly said, Impossible. Get out of the way. Don't block the way. Damn, Guidapeng, you don't want face, do you? Brother Chong was giving you face by exchanging sluggish beasts for you. Since you won't trade, then don't blame us for being impolite. Guo Erping stood in front of Mu Yin and said eagerly, Big brother said that this is for little sister and grandma to eat. I can't give it to you. Brother Chong glared at them with his triangular eyes and laughed mockingly. Fools who only know how to eat. How can I let you waste such a treasure? Looks like the lesson I gave you last time wasn't enough. How dare you talk back to me? Men, beat them up. If I don't beat these two idiot brothers until they're scared, I, Chong Jie, will write my name backwards. The people at the back shouted and immediately rushed forward excitedly. Guoping obviously did not have the slightest bit of combat power. In just a moment, he was beaten to the point of wailing. Guodapeng, on the other hand, had great strength. However, it was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. Soon he was beaten black and blue, and his body staggered. Chong Jie had already walked in front of Mu Yin with a smile. He stretched out his chicken claw-like hand and was about to touch Mu Yan's face. It's too wasteful to directly send such a top-grade beauty to the ghost fair to be sold. Why don't you let me enjoy it first? Before Chong Jie's hand could touch the young girl's soft skin, he was already met with a pair of peach blossom eyes that seemed to be smiling, yet not smiling. A chill ran down his back for no reason, and his whole body couldn't help but shiver. But soon Chong Jie came to his senses. He was actually scared by a stinky woman who had lost the ability to resist. He immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation and raised his dark and rough hand to slap Mu Yan's face. Chapter 31-32. 1 second. Remember, LoveNet, providing you with wonderful reading. Smelly whore, you're just a woman. How dare you look at lousy like that? Who do you think you are? There's a slap. This slap is obviously not light. Chong Jie's underlings are teasing that their boss doesn't know how to have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex, actually laying his hands on such a rare and exquisite beauty. The next moment, they see a figure heavily colliding towards them. The people who are beating up the Guo brothers only feel a huge force hitting them. Their whole body is knocked to the ground. Lousy is dying from the pain. Chong Jie clutched the side of his face that was swollen to the size of a pig's head and let out a muffled scream. He opens his mouth and spits out several bloody teeth. Everyone looks up, only to find that the girl lying on the stretcher has stood up at some point. Her body is still tied with ropes. The clothes on her body are stained with blood or mud. Her hair is disheveled, looking battered and exhausted. But those peach blossom eyes are languid and disdainful, looking at Chong Jie like looking at an ant that can be crushed at any time. Damn smelly woman, you dare to hit me. Go, all of you go up. Dislocate her hands and feet. Lousy must properly kill her later. Chong Jie's face is half swollen, his face distorted as he looks at Mu Yin. Smelly whore, very soon, you will know the consequences of offending me, young Master Chong. Hearing that, Chong Jie's underlings immediately rush over with fiendish expressions. Each of them has a ferocious and cruel look in their eyes. Although the muscles on their body can't be said to be strong, but each punch and each kick is extremely explosive. Facing the siege of so many strong men, the thin and weak girl is like a willow in the wind, as if she could be destroyed at any time. However, Mu Yin chuckles. Temporarily can't use spiritual power, mysterious power, speaking as if she would lose in a competition of pure physical strength. She has a magic nucleus in her body. With the daily operation of a magic nucleus, her body has gradually been transformed into the world's most powerful devil body. Seeing that several people have rushed forward, Mu Yin exerts force on her feet, suddenly spinning her body and kicking sideways. Bang! A burly man was sent flying, and the bones in his body seemed to be cracking. He hits the ground and directly faints. Bang, bang, bang. After a few consecutive loud bangs, the arrogant smile on Chong Jie's face froze before it could disappear. He stared blankly at his subordinates who were lying on the ground, coughing up blood. It was unknown if they were dead or alive. She then looked at the beautiful girl who had not even untied her hands and was slowly walking towards her. A terrified expression appeared on his face as he screamed, Don't come over. Don't come any closer." He fumbled around his waist in a panic and pulled out a sharp knife that shone with a white light. Ha! Ha! Damn bitch, how could I forget? I have a weapon made from demon bone. Since your hands are tied, killing you is as easy as flipping my palm. Saying that, Chang Jie waved the knife in his hand and stabbed it towards Mayan's open abdomen. The moment the sharp knife was brandished, Mu Yin felt a strange energy fluctuation. But when he tried to sense it carefully, he couldn't feel anything. The dagger was clearly flashing with a faint fluorescent light, but in her divine sense, it felt empty. Bitch, go to hell. Ha ha. Chang Jie's knife stopped in midair. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit Zii. Chapter 31-33. 1 second remember, LoveNet, providing you with wonderful reading. Chang Jie's wrist is caught by a slender hand that's as white as jade. The fingers that seem to be carved out of white jade, with a slight coolness, clasps his wrist, making him unable to move. Chang Jie raises his head in horror. When did this woman break free? His face reddens, and he desperately wants to stab forward with the knife. But his hand doesn't move. There's a cracking sound coming from the bones of his hand. Ah! Chang Jie lets out a mournful scream, and helplessly watches as his arm is directly broken by those slender fingers. It's bent into a beautiful angle, and slowly stabs toward his throat. No, you can't kill me. Chang Jie's eyes widen in horror, and he screams hysterically, my father is the steward of the Ghost Fair, and my uncle is an outer disciple of the Mountain Split sect. If you kill me, my father and uncle will never let you off. Mountain Split sect? What kind of sect is this? Mu Yin's gesture pauses. Chang Jie shows an expression of relief, and he's both resentful and proud in his heart. He thinks to himself, you stinking woman dare to offend me like this. When you fall in my hands, I'll make you beg for death. Pucci. Chang Jie is imagining a beautiful future. Suddenly, he sees a line of blood shooting out in front of his eyes. He widens his eyes in disbelief and slowly lowers his head. He sees that the entire demon bone knife has entered his throat. Crack, crack, crack. How can this be? How can he die in this place? Who is this woman? How could she dare to kill him? Mu Yin moves her wrists that are numb from being tied up. She slowly steps forward and pulls out the knife from Chang Jie's throat. She takes a look at it. It's really strange. It clearly doesn't have any spiritual power attribute, but it seems to contain a powerful force. Moreover, Mu Yin feels that the natal sword in her body is restless. It seems that there's some strange energy on the knife that's attracting the 7 absolutes sword to swallow and absorb it. Mu Yin turns to look at the Guo brothers, the only 2 who are still alive. This knife, she hasn't finished speaking. Guo Dapeng had already pulled his brother to his knees and begged, Heroine, please spare my life. It was us brothers who had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai and offended you, Heroine. Please be magnanimous and spare my younger brother Erping. As long as you are willing to spare my brother, you can do whatever you want with my lowly life. Don't. Guo Erping was so anxious that he burst into tears and snot. If you want to eat me. Don't eat my big brother. Big brother still needs to find food for little sister and grandma. Erpeng is useless, so you eat Erpeng. Mu Yin rolls her eyes. You're so skinny that you look like a bag of bones. I'm not afraid of burping my teeth when I eat you. Shut up. Answer whatever I ask. If you dare to spout another word of nonsense, you can go and accompany these people. Guo Dapeng was stunned. Only then did he realize that the girl didn't seem to want to kill them immediately. He calmed down and quickly said, Heroine, please ask. I will definitely tell you everything I know. Mu Yin glanced around and said in a heavy voice, What is this place? Guo Dapeng was somewhat stumped by the question. After a long while, he cautiously said, This is Gravel Hill. Heroine, I don't know. Mu Yin frowns. Where is Gravel Hill? Guo Dapeng is even more stunned. How can he answer this? Gravel Hill is the outermost area of the floating island. Generally, there are only useless people with no talent for cultivation. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 31-34. Muyin can no longer hear the rest of Guodapeng's words. There were only 3 words in her mind. Floating island. This is a floating island. How did she end up on the floating island? Yes, Muyin suddenly remembers when she thought that she was about to be struck to death by the heavenly thunder of God's punishment. The little chick suddenly rolled out and bumped into her. Then, the special reward from the Tianguang ruins, the flickering light jade key, dropped out. So, it was the floating light jade key that saved her, but instead of sending her to the cultivation continent, it sent her to the sky floating island? The current Mu Yin was no stranger to the floating island. 4th senior sister Lung Yuma's mother should have been sent to the floating island soul nurturing pool to recuperate. Eldest senior brother, little 7, and the others were hunted down by the Lan family empire of the floating island, which was why they finally escaped to the floating island. Her mother, Ning Yinxin, had been taken away from the cultivation continent, and her final destination should be this floating island. Mu Yin slightly narrows her eyes, her expression fluctuating. Guodapeng was so scared that he didn't even dare to breathe. Seeing that his younger brother Guo Erpeng was about to raise his head to speak, he hurriedly pressed him down. After a long while, Mayan says again, "Tell me in detail about the situation of the floating island and the gravel hill." Guodapeng was even more puzzled. This powerful and shockingly beautiful girl in front of him seemed to know nothing about common sense. Where did she come from? However, even if Guodapeng was given 100 guts, he would not dare to ask such a question. He just lowered his head and said all the information he knew while trembling with fear. Hearing Guodapeng's description, Mu Yin was a little disappointed. This was because Guodapeng didn't know much. He had been born on this gravel hill. This gravel hill was located in the most remote part of the floating island. Many years ago, for some reason, the spirit chi and immortal chi in the rocky hill dried up overnight. Moreover, it formed a natural barrier, isolating the gravel mound from the rest of the floating island. This was a place where one could only enter and not leave. Every once in a while, there would always be those who had nowhere else to go, or those who had abandoned their cultivation, who were forced to enter this place. However, these outsiders usually could not adapt to life in the rocky hills. In the end, he either went crazy or committed suicide. The people in the Rocky Mound were born here and died here. They would never be able to escape from this barren land. Moreover, the resources here were extremely scarce. Not to mention spirit stones for cultivation, even something as simple as having enough to eat and wear warm clothes was a luxury for them. Mu Yin looks at the two again. Guo Erpeng was already 12 years old, but he was dark and skinny. At first glance, one would think that he was only 7 or 8 years old. Guodapeng was tall, but his entire body was sallow and emaciated. It was obvious that he had not been receiving nutrition for a long time. When Xiuzhi reached the stage of fasting, they could use Ling power to temper their bodies and only needed to eat a small amount of food. But the Guo brothers in front of him were obviously ordinary people. What do you usually eat? Yes, sometimes I go to the trash mountain to search. Garbage Mountain, as the name suggested, was a real mountain of garbage. It was right next to the boundary between the boulder mound and the floating island. It was filled with garbage thrown from the floating island. Most of the garbage was useless and polluted waste. However, there were also a small number of magic treasure fragments and an even smaller amount of food. Every day, there would be countless people rummaging through the pile of trash in the gravel hill. Chapter 31-35. As long as they find food, even if it's rotten, it's bound to contain abundant spiritual power, enough to keep them full for several days. If they find magic weapon fragments, although they can't eat them, they can still take them to the ghost fair to trade. However, because there are too many people rummaging, there's less and less food in the garbage mountain. Often, after searching for 2 or 3 days, they'll be exhausted but still find nothing. They can't fill their stomachs. This kind of life is simply unimaginable for Mu Yin. But Guodapeng and the others seem to be used to it. When we can't find food in the garbage mountain, we come to the Yunluo mountain to hunt sluggish beasts. Sluggish beast? Sluggish beast is delicious. Big brother, I want to eat sluggish beast. Guo Erping drooled. Guo Daping knocks him on the head and snappily says, "Shut up. Do you think sluggish beasts are so easy to catch?" Mu Yin is puzzled. Is sluggish beast very strong? That's not it. Guo Daping immediately puts on a flattering and careful smile as he talks to Mu Yin. Sluggish beasts are actually cloud beast companion beasts. They usually lie on the back of cloud beasts. Only very occasionally will they leave their cloud beasts, and that's the only time we can capture them. Cloud beasts? Mu Yin suddenly thinks of something and raises the sharp knife she just grabbed from Chang Jia. Is this knife made from the bones of cloud beasts? Yes. Heroine, you're so smart. Guo Daping nods again and again, looking at the sharp knife in Mu Yan's hand with shining eyes, like looking at a precious holy object. Cloud beasts are extremely powerful. If we want to hunt them, we need to organize an elite team of at least 100 people to succeed. But once the cloud beasts are killed, the harvest is great. The whole body of cloud beasts is a treasure, and the swords made from their bones are no worse than the treasured swords thrown in by the floating island. Also, their skin can be made into the strongest armor. Their meat is a world's delicacy. Roar! Guo Daping hasn't finished his words when suddenly a roar comes from the sky. There's a sudden gale on the barren mountain, blowing sand and pebbles. Guo Daping's voice stops abruptly, and he stiffly raises his head to look at the sky. When he sees the huge black wings spread above, he screams in horror, "Cloud beasts!" It was a cloud beast. It must have been attracted by the smell of blood. Run! Run! Guo Daping grabbed his younger brother and ran into the distance without a care for anything else. Mu Yin looks up at the giant beast in the sky, revealing an indescribable expression. Cloud beast. The name was so poetic and pleasant to hear. In the end, his appearance was too unsightly. It was a complete skeleton wrapped in a layer of black skin, and there were thousands of lumps of flesh on the skin. It looked like a toad that had been magnified countless times and then pulled into the shape of a bird. The cloud beast in the sky also saw the prey on the ground. After letting out a strange cry, it swooped down like a bolt of lightning towards the Guo brothers. "No, don't come any closer." Guo Daping's eyes were filled with fear and despair. He took one last look at his younger brother, who was already dumbfounded. Disregarding everything else, she pounced on him and pinned him beneath her. He was waiting for the cloud beast's sharp claws to tear his body apart. However, the expected pain did not come. It was replaced by the sharp and angry roars of the cloud beasts. Guo Daping blankly raises his head to look. He saw that the cloud beast that had swooped down had rushed up to the sky at some unknown time. Chapter 31-36. Its gigantic body kept tumbling in the air, kicking up a cloud of yellow sand. He could vaguely see a slender figure standing steadily on the cloud beast's neck. Guo Daping slowly opened his mouth, revealing an expression of disbelief. Was it that heroine? She was actually standing on the neck of a cloud beast? Furthermore, no matter how the cloud beast swooped down, rolled, and crashed, the young girl's figure remained steady. Guo Daping knew that the best thing to do now was to escape with his younger brother while the cloud beast was distracted by the girl. But his feet seemed to be fixed in place, and his eyes were glued to the top, unwilling to move even an inch. There was only one thought in his mind. What does this girl want? Even a team of over 100 strong men might not be able to kill a cloud beast on the rocky hill. Could it be that this seemingly weak and slender girl wanted to kill it by herself? How is this possible? The next moment, Guo Daping saw a scene that he would never forget. A translucent longsword slowly appeared in the girl's palm. Under the illumination of the sun, the long sword emitted a colorful and dazzling light. Then, the girl raised her sword and lightly swung it at the rock's neck. A mournful cry pierced through the air. Then, Guo Daping watched helplessly as the huge black shadow fell from the sky and smashed heavily onto the ground. Sand and dust flew everywhere, and the earth trembled. The giant head of the cloud beast landed 5 meters away from Guo Daping. A pair of gray vertical pupils were wide open, seemingly filled with unwillingness and disbelief. Guodapeng felt like he was dreaming. He didn't even dare to cough when he choked on the dust. He just stared blankly at the beheaded cloud beast. He watched as the muddy girl slowly landed on the ground. Bang, bang, bang. Mu Yin kicks the furry little things lying on the back of the cloud beast one by one. Is this the sluggish beast you mentioned? Why'd it look like a mouse? It's just that it's 3 to 4 times bigger than a mouse in the Yinwu continent. These recovery beasts clearly didn't have any combat power. With a casual kick from Mu Yin, he fainted. Brother, big brother, there are so many recovery beasts. Brother, do you see them? We can eat our fill. Grandpa and little sister won't be hungry anymore. Guodapeng hurriedly stopped his younger brother, who was about to rush over to catch the sluggish beast. Erpeng, behave yourself. These belong to the heroine. Who said you can take them? Take it. Mu Yin casually waved her hand. I'm not interested in eating mice. And the biggest problem was that even if she was interested, she didn't know how to cook. He couldn't let her eat raw mice, right? WH what? Heroine, you mean to say that you're giving us all of these beasts? Are you telling the truth? Mu Yin didn't care about the Guo brothers' ecstasy. At this time, she was holding the 7 Absolutes sword and circling around the corpse of the cloud beast. In the end, he raised his sword and pulled out a palm-sized bone from the back of the cloud beast. Mu Yin discovered that only this bone was emitting a unique energy fluctuation. She leaned the bone against the 7 Absolutes sword in her hand. The 7 Absolutes sword immediately let out a violent buzzing sound, as if it wanted to swallow the bone immediately. Qi Huang, do you know what this thing is? She heard a disjointed voice. Condense the heart of the sword, gather enough, find a refiner. Forge the 7-749. Natal sword array. She didn't know if it was because she couldn't use her spiritual power now, or if it was because of the peculiarity of the gravel hill. Chapter 31-37. Mu Yin can't open the Tian Mo Chin space right now, and Little Phoenix and the others can't come out either. The connection between her and Qi Huang is also intermittently broken. But Mu Yin still understands Qi Huang's meaning. This thing can be used to forge her natal sword. And Qi Huang has expressed extreme contempt for her having only one natal sword a long time ago. According to Qi Huang's meaning, even that pretty boy Luo Yunxiao has more than a dozen natal swords. If Mu Yin only has one, where would he, the honorable spirit, put his face? Therefore, she must forge Qi Huang's 49 natal swords to form an invincible sword array. Otherwise, she won't be finished. Even with Mu Yan's confidence and arrogance, the corners of her mouth can't help but twitch when she thinks of this. It's already amazing for others to have one natal sword. Forge 49 natal swords? Qi Xiaowang, are you fucking kidding me? But when she thinks of the scene of this brat throwing a tantrum, if she doesn't fulfill his wish, Mu Yin helplessly turns to look at Guodapeng. Are there very few cloud beasts in Gravel Hill? No, there are many cloud beasts in Gravel Hill. It's just that they're in the depths of Mount Yunluo and rarely come here. Guodapeng suddenly stares at Mu Yin. Heroine, don't tell me you want to go to Mount Yunluo to hunt cloud beasts? This must not be done. Cloud beasts usually appear in groups of 3 or 5, and the deeper you go into Mount Yunluo, the higher the level of the cloud beasts. For some reason, those high-level cloud beasts rarely come out of Mount Yunluo, but rumor has it that as long as a high-level cloud beast comes out, it can directly destroy a town. Heroine, you're indeed skilled in martial arts, but it's still too dangerous to go into Mount Yunluo alone. Mu Yin smiles. Thank you for the reminder. Then she waves her hand and turns to walk towards the depths of Mount Yunluo without hesitation. Hey, heroine, the corpse of this cloud beast, I'll give it to you. Take it as thanks for the information you provided. Guodapeng stares blankly at the girl's gradually disappearing figure in the distance, then looks at the ground full of recovery beasts and cloud beast corpses. After a long while, he murmurs, Erpeng, are we really not dreaming? This is already Mayan's 5th day at Mount Yunluo. She was surrounded by the corpses of cloud beasts, and she was filthy beyond recognition. It wasn't that she didn't want to change her clothes, but the spiritual power in her dantian was still pitifully little. She still can't open the Tion Mo-Chin space. Even the cloud bone, which he had painstakingly removed, could only be wrapped in a piece of beast skin and carried on his back. Coo, 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 the dirty little Inghor rolled to her feet and let out a cheerful cackle. Mu Yin looks at this naive and sweet child and is speechless. He really didn't know what breed this stupid chicken was. She and Shi Huang couldn't break the Tion Mo-Chin space enchantment, but it can enter and leave whenever it wants. However, this guy didn't even have the slightest bit of combat power. Every time he came out, he would either cause trouble or cry for help. Guga Gigi, mommy, mommy. Huang Wang was hungry. He wanted to eat Wu Wu's cooking. 55 referred to 5th senior brother Ling Yuxing. The little chick liked to repeat words when addressing people, and its mind was like that of a child. As a result, the people of the Xiao Yao sect became 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, and Wu Wu in his mouth. After that, the little chick shook its dirty feathers and added a sentence. I want to eat Papa's cooking the most. Wonderful. Chapter 31-38. Mu Yin rolls her eyes. She's also hungry. She also wants to eat the dishes cooked by Diming Ju and 5th brother. But the problem is that she's in this damned place with no one to answer her cries. Where can she find Diming Ju and 5th brother? Eat, eat, eat. You only know how to eat. Mu Yin touches her flat belly, pointing at the little chick's head as she righteously reprimands. What else can you do besides eating? You're deliberately bringing up food at this time, aren't you? Guji, the little chick tilts its head, turning its round head. Then it spits out a bubble and scurries into her arms. Mu Yin has lost her temper because of this child. Just as she's about to say something, her complexion suddenly changes. Huang Wang, go back to the space. The little chick looks at Mu Yan's expression. This time, it doesn't dare to act rashly and quickly returns to the Tion Mo-Chin space. Almost at the same time as the little chick disappears, there's a rumbling sound coming from all directions in the wasteland. In the sky, a huge black cloud is following closely behind, rapidly approaching. In just a short moment, the sky, the ground, the lake, and the densely packed cloud beasts have completely surrounded her. Since entering Mount Yunluo, this is the first time Mu Yan's complexion has changed. Cloud beasts really do like to move in groups, but they're usually in groups of 3 to 5, and at most 10. But how many cloud beasts are there in front of her? Flying in the sky, crawling on the ground, swimming in the water, at a glance there are at least 100. And she can't use her spiritual power right now. She can't even take out the Tion Mo-Chin, and she has no other weapons apart from the 7 absolute swords. Roar! The cloud beasts close at hand have red eyes, a crazed look in their eyes, drool dripping from their open mouths. Mu Yin slowly pulls out the 7 absolute swords, the corners of her mouth hooking up into a disdainful smile. Very good. If I kill you all, I won't have to work hard to collect cloud bones anymore. Stellar Domain is released in a flash. On a faraway hill, a youth dressed in white, his eyes covered with red silk, is sitting on a tree, watching the battle in the distance with a contented expression. There are many spiritual fruits beside him, and he's enjoying the show while throwing one into his mouth from time to time. 4th order domain? Not bad. But it's also true, if he didn't have a bit of skill, how could he let Diming Ju take a fancy to him? And how could he make Jiejia so restless and restless? The young man tossed a spirit fruit into his mouth before suddenly yelling again. Ayaya, my shoulder was bitten. How could he be so careless? The teeth of cloud beasts are poisonous. As expected, my movements have slowed down. My leg has also been hit by a poisonous needle. This time, it's really impossible to escape. How pitiful. He said it was pitiful. The youth's face was filled with a gloating smile. The spirit fruit in his mouth seemed to have become even more fragrant and sweet. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he smiled like a shy boy next door. However, the words that came out of his mouth were cold and vicious. It turns out that the woman that Diming Ju fancies is also this kind of senseless trash. Since that's the case, then go to hell. But in the next instant, the youth's smile froze on his face. He abruptly straightened up and gazed at the faraway wasteland, his two elegant sword-like eyebrows tightly knit together. Where is she? In the faraway wasteland, the corpses of cloud beasts are piled up like a mountain. However, the other half were roaring and running around in search of it. But the target that they wanted to attack has already disappeared at some point. Chapter 31-39. A bit interesting. The youth holds the spirit fruit in his mouth, overflowing with interest. It actually disappeared from under my eyes. This is the first time I've encountered such a situation. He operates his divine sense, about to look around carefully. Suddenly, his complexion changes slightly. Before he can move, he gets a heavy kick on his butt. The youth staggers forward, barely grabbing a branch in front of him so that he doesn't fall flat on his face. That handsome and delicate face shows a rare look of astonishment. TSK, you're very happy watching the show here. You even prepared snacks. Muyin stretches out her blood-stained hand, grabbing the youth's spirit fruit without hesitation and throwing it into her mouth. More than half of her face was covered in blood and sand, so much so that she could not be seen clearly. Only that pair of phoenix eyes are bright, overflowing with youth, as if they could easily hook away a person's soul. The youth slightly hangs his head, pitifully saying, "Big sister, that's my spirit fruit." "Oh, is that so?" Muyin stuffs the unfinished spirit fruit into her bag. "So? How can you rob a blind person's food?" Muyin is still holding a spirit fruit in her mouth. Taking a bite, she says with a smile that isn't a smile, "But I'm robbing it. What can you do to me? Let those cloud beasts attack me again?" The corner of the youth's mouth slowly hooks up. A gentle breeze blows, brushing his long, ink-black hair and the red silk ribbon intertwined with it. "I'm really curious. How did little sister escape from the cloud beasts, and how did you discover my existence?" Muyin turns her wrist, and the Tian Mo Chin appears in her hand. Spiritual power surges, and intermittent sounds of the zither resound between heaven and earth. "First, I don't know how old you are, but you're definitely older than me. So don't call me little sister. I'm not interested in recognizing an old monster as my younger brother. Second, I have no enmity with you. We don't know each other, but you led a group of cloud beasts to take my life. What's the reason?" The youth in front of her chuckles. The laughter is very clear and pleasant, but it makes Mu Yan's hair stand on end. She is on full alert, one hand on the Tian Mo Chin, and the other slowly grasps the seven absolute sword. She was in a very dangerous situation during the battle with the cloud beast just now. Fortunately, in the nick of time, the Dantian's spiritual power has been restored to a certain extent, and the Tian Mo Chin is finally taken out. It's also because of the Tian Mo Chin's summer bug language of ice skill. Only then did she learn from the consciousness of the reptilian cloud beasts that someone was manipulating them. Finally, he found the teenager who was hiding and watching the show. However, the young man in front of him was truly unfathomable. No matter if it was his strength or identity, they both revealed a strange feeling that she was completely unable to see through. Suddenly, Mu Yan's pupils contract. A light breath mixed with the faint fragrance of flowers blew into his ears. "Ju Mayan? Mayan, what a nice name." His slender white fingers gently stroke the edge of the Tian Mo Chin. 3 words are engraved there, so shallow that they're almost invisible. June Mayan. "If you don't want me to call you little sister, then I'll call you Mayan, Yin, okay?" Mu Yin fiercely swept her sword horizontally. However, the figure that was so close to him disappeared in an instant. In the next moment, he appeared behind her. "Don't be so angry. This Mount Yinluo is within my sphere of influence. If Mayan hadn't barged in, I wouldn't have ordered the cloud beast to attack you." Chapter 31-40. The two of us don't get to know each other without fighting, right? Let me reintroduce myself. My name is Li Weiran, you can call me. Mu Yin stabbed out with her sword. "Oh, Mu Yin, you're so fierce. Didn't I already apologize to you? If you still don't want to calm down, I'll just let you slash me a few times to vent your anger. Mu Yin sneered. All right, if you have the ability, stand still and let me slash you. As soon as she finished speaking, the Chijue sword in her hand stabbed out again. But this time, there was a poochie sound. The long sword in her hand really felt the obstruction of the sharp blade piercing into flesh. Mu Yin stared blankly, then saw that the youth's snow-white clothes were gradually dyed with bright red blood. The youth's fair complexion became as pale as paper. His thin lips slightly pursed, barely revealing a smile. Yin Yin, is this enough for you to calm down? Mu Yin was startled, her expression falling into a trance for a moment. It wasn't because the youth didn't dodge her sword, nor was it because of what he said. But just now, when he stopped smiling and showed a weak expression, it gave her an inexplicable sense of familiarity. But this sense of familiarity only lasted for a moment before disappearing without a trace. Mu Yin frowned, sheathed her sword, and turned to leave. Hey, no way. You just left after stabbing me with your sword? Mu Yin, you can't be so irresponsible, can you? Looking at the youth shamelessly following her, Mu Yin's mouth twitched. Where was this guy's half-dead appearance from just now? He was obviously stabbed in the chest, but he didn't seem to feel it. Mu Yin glanced at him and lightly said, Didn't you say that Mount Yunluo is within your sphere of influence? I'll give you your mountain now, and you're still not satisfied. As she spoke, her figure had already arrived next to the mountain of cloud beast corpses. Those cloud beasts that hadn't died, because they were no longer under Li Weiron's control, had already regained their consciousness. Seeing Mu Yin now was like seeing a terrifying monster. One by one, they screamed and fled in all directions. Their speed was much faster than when they surrounded her earlier. Mu Yin didn't chase after them, but nimbly dug out the special cloud bone from each of the corpses. When Yin Gu was done digging, Zhang Xian turned around and realized something. The white-clothed youth with the red scarf over his eyes was still following behind her. She was quiet and obedient, following his every step, and was unbelievably obedient. Mine frowns. Why are you following me? Li Weiran said pitifully. This Yunluo mountain is too boring. I don't want to stay here alone. But there's so many bad people out there. I don't dare to go out alone. Mayan, can you take me outside to see the world? Mu Yin turns around and looks at him expressionlessly. Is the word idiot written on my face? Mayan sneers. Otherwise, why would you think that I would believe your nonsense? Li Weiron's thin lips curled up, revealing a cute smile. What does it matter whether I believe it or not? In any case, I'm determined to follow you, Mayan. If you don't agree to take me with you, He slowly moves closer to Mu Yan's ear, murmuring like a lover, I'll kill you, Mayan. Mu Yin slightly narrows her eyes and takes a step back. With a wave of her hand, Chijue's sword appears in her palm. Is that so? Let's give it a try. Li Weiron's smile gradually disappeared. Mayan doesn't believe that I can kill you. Chapter 31:41. So what if I believe you? So what if I don't believe you? Mu Yin sneers. The Tian Mo Qin suddenly plays, and the fourth-level domain is released without mercy. What I hate the most in my life is when people threaten me. The wind swirls the grass and dust on the ground. The Zhue beasts that lost the protection of the cloud beasts are already panicking. They are now trembling, unable to move. Li Weiran sneers. Mu Yin, have you ever heard of a saying? Fighting against an evenly matched opponent is wise. Fighting against an enemy with a great disparity in strength is courageous. Fighting against an unreachable enemy is foolish. As he speaks, the youth's white robe flutters without any wind. His long black hair intertwines with a glaring red silk, gently swaying. A powerful, almost despair-inducing energy gushes out from Li Weiron's body. It's like a giant beast hovering in the air, as if it could swallow Mu Yin at any time. Cold sweat oozes from her forehead. Mu Yin's hand holding the Seven Absolutes sword slowly trembles. The youth opposite her, who was just a moment ago, seems to have grown a lot bigger. Even that face has lost its childishness in an instant. It has a trace of cold-blooded disdain and cruelty. But even so, Li Weiran is still smiling lightly. His voice is low and soft. I guess, Muyin, you're not such a stupid person, right? Responding to her is the whistling sword light of the 7 Absolute Sword. If you want to fight, then fight. What nonsense. Dang. Muyan's attack is blocked by an ordinary cloud bone that Li Weiran picked up. The powerful recoil caused her to fly backward. But she only pauses in the air for a moment, then quickly swoops down. Li Weiran sneers, and the cloud bone in his hand stabs forward. It's obviously an understated movement, but it instantly finds the flaw in Mu Yan's swordsmanship. Pucci. The sharp cloud bone pierces Mu Yan's heart. In the nick of time, Mu Yan dodges, but her left arm is still cut with a wound so deep that the bone can be seen. Her whole body flies out, heavily hitting the rocks. The rocks shatter, falling on her blood-stained hair. Blood overflows from the corner of her mouth. It was obvious that her spiritual power had been exhausted, which made the girl's lips pale. However, she only paused for a moment. Without even wiping the blood from the corner of her mouth, she once again raised her sword and flew over. Thousands of sword lights exploded in the desolate wilderness. Li Weiran raised his head slightly and looked at the girl holding the sword. His face revealed a rare look of confusion and surprise. There wasn't a trace of pain, fear, or cowardice in those clear and beautiful eyes. Instead, they were burning with the desire to fight. Despite knowing that he wasn't a match for Zhang Xian remained unfazed by his threat and refused to back down. This is the woman that Diming Ju likes? Li Weiran's thin lips curled up. He suddenly threw away the cloud bone in his hand and shouted, I admit defeat. Mu Yin stumbles. The sword in her hand is not in a hurry, and it almost pierces through the youth's head. She pressed the tip of her sword against Li Weiran's throat and gritted her teeth. Are you playing with me? Li Weiran pouted. What can I do? Can't I beat Mu Yin? And even if I can beat you, I can't bear to kill you. I've never met a woman as interesting as you, Mu Yin, in my entire life. Without waiting for him to finish, Mu Yin pushes the sword in her hand forward. This man is more sinister and cunning than a fox, and more treacherous and perverted than Third Brother. If she could just kill him like this, Mu Yin wouldn't mind at all. Chapter 3142. But it's clearly impossible. Sure enough, the moment Mayan sends out her sword, the figure in front of her disappears. Li Weiran's aggrieved voice comes from close behind. I apologize for controlling the cloud beast to attack you, okay? Mayan touches her forehead and turns to leave. Damn, this bastard, I can't beat him. My skin isn't as thick as his. What else can I do? I can't provoke him. Can't I just hide? However, reality tells her she really can't. After walking for a while, Mayan finally can't bear it anymore and turns around. Li Weiran, how long are you going to follow me? Li Weiran obediently smiled and said, Of course it's to follow me until I'm not interested in you. When I feel bored, I can kill you with my own hands. Jun Mayan. Mayan looks at him expressionlessly. It's a pity that the youth's face is covered with red silk, covering the most important emotional indicator. Mayan can't see what he's thinking at all. Do you really have to follow me? Li Weiran nods. Then he sees the girl's lips curl up slightly, revealing a mysterious smile. If you want to follow me, you have to pay a price, right? Li Weiran is stunned. Did he hear wrong? There's actually someone in this world who dares to make him pay a price. Interesting, it's really getting more and more interesting. The youth also laughs. I wonder what price Mayan wants me to pay. An hour later, Li Weiran looks at the corpse of the sluggish beast in front of him. He looks up at the girl with a matter-of-fact expression. His voice, which has always been flawless, has a rare hint of inconceivable difficulty. You want me to roast meat? Whatever you want to do. Mayan crosses her arms and resolutely says, In short, I want to eat a normal hot meal. If you can cook to my satisfaction, I'll allow you to follow me. How about it? Li Weiran still finds it hard to believe and can't help but ask again. You want me to cook for you? Mayan smiles slightly. Is there a problem? Li Weiran stares blankly for a long time, then chuckles. No problem. I think roasting meat is quite interesting. After saying that, he obediently takes the corpse of the sluggish beast. He begins to peel, clean, and process it. Every step of the process was done very well. In the beginning, his movements were still a little inexperienced, but as time went on, he became more and more proficient. It was as if he was used to it. Mu Yin, who was watching from the side, was simply envious. If only she had such cooking skills. Was there a need to be so miserable every time he was left alone in the wilderness? When the sluggish beast was placed on the fire and roasted, the sizzling sound of oil popping could be heard. An alluring fragrance pervaded the mountains and fields. Mu Yin couldn't help but swallow her saliva. For the first time in his heart, he wavered on whether or not he should get rid of Li Weiran. Goo, it smelled so good. The little chick, who had been starving for a long time, rolled out of the cafeteria as soon as it smelled the aroma of food. Gee. Woof, woof, woof. Is Daddy here? Or was Wu roasting meat? It smells so good. Huang wants to eat it. Mu Yin hugged the little chick in her arms and knocked on its head. Quiet. Do you think I don't want to eat it? Can't you see that the meat isn't cooked yet? Thus, one man and one chicken stared at Li Weiran, who was roasting meat. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the Hui beast meat was finally cooked. Chapter 3143. The golden and crispy skin was cut open with a knife, and the juices were dripping out of the tender meat. There was also the seasoning that Li Weiran got from somewhere. The fragrance is like a snake, constantly drilling into Mu Yan's nose. Her stomach, which had been empty for more than 10 days, felt as if there was a hand stirring it, and she couldn't help but let out a rumbling sound. The saliva secretion in his mouth was completely out of control. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Little Ling Hua squawked and shot forward like a cannonball. He threw himself into the recovery beast, not fearing the heat, and quickly began to gorge himself. Mu Yin wasn't polite at all. She grabbed a recovery beast's leg and brought it to her mouth to take a bite. Delicious. It was simply too delicious. It's so delicious that Mayan simply wants to cry. Although she had already abstained from eating, as long as there was a little bit of spiritual energy left in her body, it didn't matter if she didn't eat. But I didn't feel it when I was alone. Later, after her appetite was spoiled by Diming, Ju, and fifth brother, her mouth became picky. Not to mention starving for half a month like this. She wouldn't even be interested in food that was slightly inferior in taste. Who would have thought that Li Weiran's personality was so perverted? His mood was unpredictable, and his origins were unknown, but his culinary skills were so good. Watching the man and the chicken eating heartily, Li Weiran, on the other hand, tore off a small piece of the beast's foreleg and chewed on it in a refined manner. The corners of his mouth were curled up, as if he was very satisfied with the recognition of his craftsmanship. All of a sudden, the little chick, who was happily eating, suddenly raised its head and let out a shrill cry. Goo, Mama. So painful. Mu Yin quickly put down the roast meat in her hands and grabbed the little chick. Huang, what's wrong? Gurgle. His stomach hurt. It hurts, Mom. Mu Yin took out a pill and was about to stuff it into the little chick's mouth. Suddenly, his fingers trembled and his face turned pale. His trembling lips were now mottled with green and purple. She suddenly raised her head and glared at the young man not far away. You poisoned me, Li Weiran giggled. I've been discovered. Mu Yin, you can't blame me. I brought so many seasonings with me. Some of them are poisonous, and some are not. I was too focused on roasting the meat, so it's normal that I couldn't tell them apart. As the youth spoke, he approached Mu Yin with a smile that was not a smile. Tilting her head slightly, she revealed an innocent and pure expression. You look like you're in pain. If I'm not wrong, Mu Yin, you should be poisoned by the rotting heart powder. If you don't detoxify it immediately, your internal organs will be crushed. During this process, the pain would remain until the complete heart was crushed. Only then would the person die. That kind of suffering is like walking in hell. Just thinking about it makes me feel pitiful. Li Weiran slowly lowered his head. He was so close to Mu Yan that they could almost hear each other's breaths. Looking at the sweat beading on the girl's face due to the pain, and her lips that were starting to crack and bleed, Li Weiron's smile deepened. If you really can't take it anymore, Mu Yan can try begging me. I have the antidote on me. If he had heard Mayan's bitter pleading, he might have been soft-hearted and taken out. Swoosh! Before Li Weiran could finish his words, a sword light suddenly shot up from below and ruthlessly slashed across Li Weiran's face. On the young man's jade-white forehead, there was a vertical cut. Bright red blood slowly seeped out. Chapter 3144. The red silk that had been covering her eyes was also cut open by the saber, revealing the youth's long eyelashes, tightly closed eyes, and high nose bridge. The long eyelashes tremble slightly, slowly opening. However, before she can clearly see what those eyes look like, the red light flashes, and the red silk that had disappeared reappears, completely covering the youth's eyes and nose bridge. Mayan's heart thumps. A vague but shocking thought flashes through her mind. The youth who just lost the red silk gives her a stronger sense of familiarity. But who does he look like? Why can't she remember, no matter how hard she tries? If she can remove the red silk and take another look, maybe she will be able to remember. Her slender fingers caress the bloodstain between her eyebrows. Li Weiron's voice is cold and low. Mayan, were you just playing with me? The girl in front of him has a calm expression, and her lips are normal. She is still carelessly gnawing on the roasted meat in her hands. She doesn't look like she was poisoned and on the verge of death. Then she looks at the little chick that was just on its last breath. At this time, it's giggling nonstop. From time to time, it even pulls its neck, making a painful appearance of being poisoned. Then it giggles and rolls into Mayan's arms. Giggle, guguji, mommy. Isn't Huang acting good? He. Is Huang powerful? Mayan rubs its head, rewarding it with a piece of roasted meat. Then she looks up at Li Weiran, sneering. I already disdained to play with poison like rotting heart powder 2 years ago. Since you're so interested, why don't I keep you company? Almost as soon as Mayan's voice falls, Li Weiran feels a burning pain from the wound on his forehead. The blood that was originally oozing out gradually turns into a rancid black-red color. His internal organs seem to feel the pain of being turned upside down. The poison that Mayan used is similar to rotting heart powder, but it's far more powerful. Li Weiron's fair skin is gradually dyed with a frightening purple color. His body also trembles slightly from the pain of the poison's corrosion. Mayan gnaws on the fragrant roasted meat while appreciating his painful expression with great interest. But her eyes are also full of regret. What a pity. She was very clear that this little bit of poison would not be able to kill Li Weiran. She couldn't even see through the cultivation of this eccentric and treacherous man whose identity was unknown. If Li Weiran really wanted to kill him, it would be a piece of cake. But Mu Yan can clearly feel that this youngster doesn't have any clear killing intent toward her, but is full of malice. It was as if he had a stomach full of evil tricks and wanted to see him panicking and begging for mercy. Sure enough, after Li Weiran wiped away the black and red blood that flowed out of his forehead, he laughed softly. Although his eyes were covered, one could still see the incredulous expression on his face. How many years has it been since someone made me suffer a loss? This feeling is so refreshing. June Mayan, what kind of woman are you? I'm getting more and more interested in you. Mu Yan's expression is indifferent. She carelessly says, let's not talk about whether you're interested or not. Is your cooking only good at barbecuing? Eating too much barbecued meat would make one sick of it. Do you know how to make soup? Do you know how to cook? Go. Little Ling Huang excitedly agrees. Drink soup. Daddy's soup is the best. Li Weiran. He shows a bashful smile and warmly says, aren't you afraid that I will continue to poison the food? Chapter 3145. Mu Yan raises her eyebrows. Her peach blossom eyes are languid and disdainful. Go ahead and use the poison. If I'm poisoned to death after eating it, it's my loss. But the premise is that you have to guarantee that our 3 meals are delicious. How about it? Of course, don't blame me if your skills are inferior and you get killed instead. Even someone as perverted as Li Weiran fell silent for a moment. The atmosphere between the two was harmonious and friendly. Who would have thought that the topic they were talking about was how to poison each other? The long eyelashes covered by the red silk fluttered slightly. Even with the obstruction, Mu Yin can still feel the scorching and excited gaze that is cast on her. Her heart skipped a beat. She had suspected that Li Weiran wasn't blind at all. At this moment, his guess was completely confirmed. But if she wasn't blind, why did she cover her eyes with the red silk? Just as he was feeling doubtful, he heard the youth's deep and alluring voice. Sure, I agree. Then, I'll have to trouble Mayan to give me some pointers. This is the ghost market. Listening to the noise of the people and smelling the messy stench, Mu Yin couldn't help but be a little absent-minded. Everything here gave her a distant sense of familiarity. In her previous life, she was sold into the ghost cities Wanrenku by Gong Chinchue's confidant. Those gathered there are the lowest, most savage, and most sinister humans of the entire Yenwu continent. They could kill for a mouthful of food. They could also sell their bodies without hesitation in order to survive. The entire 10,000 cave was always filled with chaos, violence, and a suffocating rancid smell. Although the ghost market in front of them was not like the bloody law of the jungle, like the Wanrenku. After all, the ghost market allowed people to enter and leave at will. And once Wanrenku was sent in, there was almost no possibility of escape. But the cruelty, brutality, and malice that grew out of despair were exactly the same as those in 10,000 cave. The ground of the ghost market was muddy. Occasionally, a few children in tattered clothes would scream and run past, splashing putrid muddy water on the ground. Wooden houses were built in a disorderly manner, forming several crisscrossing alleys. As long as there were gaps on both sides of the alleys, people could be seen setting up stalls or begging on the ground. Cries of pain could be heard from some of the wooden houses. There were also men and women dressed neatly in front of some wooden houses. They put on makeup, put on charming expressions, and shouted at the passers-by. Sir, come in and have a seat. We have a pair of beautiful sisters here, and we guarantee that you will be satisfied. Hold on, heroine. Look at how soft and tender this young man is. Moreover, he is very sturdy. You can play with him however you want. The moment Mu Yin and Li Weiran entered the ghost market, they attracted countless gazes. Of course, it's not Mu Yin who's attracting his attention. After staying in Mount Yunluo for more than 10 days, Mine's appearance isn't much better than that of a savage beggar. His clothes were tattered, his hair was tangled, his face was covered in mud, and his body emitted a foul stench. It was exactly the same as the ghost market. Li Weiran was the complete opposite of her. The youth was dressed in a snow-white robe, and even the shoes on his feet were spotless. His black hair fluttered like clouds, like a waterfall of ink. The bright red satin covered his face, making his skin look even colder and as fair as jade. His thin lips were pink and seductive. The smooth and perfect curves extended from his temples to his chin and then to his delicate collarbone. The youth's entire person was like a work of art carved out of white jade. Chapter 3146. Beautiful, precious, and fragile. Completely incompatible with this messy and dirty ghost market. Hey, what's the price of this rabbit? As long as you name a price, I'll take it all. A man's rough voice comes to Mayan's ears. She turns around in surprise and finds a dark-skinned, fierce-looking man staring at Li Weiran with a fiery gaze. She can't help but drool from her mouth. Get lost. I've taken a fancy to this kid. None of you are allowed to fight with me. A thick and solid hand reaches over and pushes Mayan away, about to touch Li Weiran's face. Mayan takes a dangerous step back, only to find out that the one pushing her is an incomparably fat middle-aged woman. One must know that in the gravel hill, it's normal to be emaciated all year round without enough to eat. But this middle-aged woman is not only fat, her eyes are squeezed into slits. Moreover, Her whole body is covered with gestures made of cloud bones. Even the vest on the outside was made of the skin of a cloud beast. Everyone knows at once that this middle-aged woman's background is definitely not simple. Thus, the people who were originally interested in Li Weiran all retreat in fear. The brawny man who spoke first is clearly unwilling and still wants to rush forward. But he's pulled back by his companion. Have you lost your mind? Do you know who this woman is? She's Zhang Guihong, the daughter of the Mountain Split Sect's outer sect steward. Do you still want to mingle in the Gravel Hill after offending her? Although the Gravel Hill only allows entry and not exit, it's isolated from the world. But every year, a large amount of trash would be thrown here from the floating island, and there would also be abandoned disabled people or criminals exiled here. Therefore, there must be a connection point between the Gravel Hill and the floating island. But the Gravel Hill is really too remote, and there's no profit to be made. Therefore, the sects and families with a bit of capital are all unwilling to come here. Therefore, the job of managing this connection point falls on the head of a small sect on the floating island, the Mountain Split Sect. The people of the Mountain Split Sect have special permission to enter and exit the Gravel Hill's boundary, although they can't let the refugees out of the Gravel Hill. But they can open an outer sect in the Gravel Hill and select the elite martial artists of the Gravel Hill to be the outer sect's steward and disciples. These people specialize in receiving the trash from the floating island, purchasing cloud bones, and managing the refugees in the Gravel Hill. Naturally, they had great power. Chang Jie, who was killed by Mu Yan at the edge of Mount Yinluo, only had an uncle who was an outer disciple of the mountain-splitting sect, yet he dared to clamor that Mu Yan couldn't kill him. The fat middle-aged woman before him was the daughter of the Mountain Split Sect's outer court manager. It was no wonder that no one dared to say a word, even though she was so arrogant. Zhang Guihong's chubby hand was about to touch Li Weiran's face. Li Weiran dodged and hid behind Mu Yan. Mu Yan's face is filled with regret. She really wanted to see this little pervert being teased and bullied. Zhang Guihong doesn't know what Mayan is thinking. Seeing that Li Weiran was hiding behind her, her face darkened and she said gruffly, "You slut, are you trying to steal my man?" Mu Yan resolutely shakes her head. "No, I don't want to. Take him away." "Ha ha." Zhang Guihong laughed wildly. "At least you have some self-awareness. Brat, did you hear that? Your previous master has already given you to me. Hurry up and come over. As long as you're obedient, I promise you'll have a good life." Chapter 31:47. As she spoke, Zhang Guihong waved her hand. Someone immediately came up with a large piece of jerky. Zhang Guihong tossed the jerky in her hand into the air and arrogantly said, "Do you see that? As long as you come over now, this piece of jerky is yours. And if you serve me well, I guarantee that you'll be able to eat meat for every meal in the future." Slurp. The sound of countless people drooling could be heard. That was the precious meat of a cloud beast. Moreover, they could smell a salty aroma. Obviously, it was added with precious seasoning. At this moment, they suddenly envied this white-clothed youth. If they could sell their bodies in exchange for meat for every meal, they would be willing. Standing behind Zhang Guihong was a man dressed in silk and satin. He had a decent appearance and swallowed his saliva when he saw the piece of jerky. He looked at Li Weiran with red eyes full of jealousy, but he still said generously, "Hey, little blind man, did you hear that Hong Jie asked you to come over? Even if you can't see the jerky in Hong Jie's hand, you should be able to smell it, right? Hong Jie has never been so nice to any male pet before. Be obedient and let's serve Hong Jie comfortably. You won't be lacking in good times in the future." Mayan was trying to stifle her laughter to the point of internal injury. Who knew that in the next moment, she would hear Li Weiran say in a clear and melodious voice, "I don't want to go. As long as I can be with Mayan, even if I have to eat vegetables, I'm willing. To me, she's not my master. She's the person I care about the most right now." Mayan cough, cough, cough. "Go to hell. Would you die if you didn't drag me down with you? And the person I care about the most right now. Isn't it the person I care about the most right now?" Seeing Zhang Guihong looking at her aggressively, Mayan pushed the youth behind her forward without hesitation. Without the slightest hesitation, Mu Yin pushes the youth behind her forward. "Give me the jerky. This person is yours." Then it's decided. Zhang Guihong didn't even see the dirty girl's movements. She only felt a blur in front of her eyes, and the jerky in her hand was snatched away. She was about to get angry when she smelled a faint fragrance. She opened her small eyes and saw that the jade-like, blindfolded youth was already in front of her. Even if he couldn't see his eyes, it didn't affect his elegant bearing at all. That thin waist, those straight legs, that slender neck. Zhang Guihong swallows a mouthful of saliva. She has long thrown Mayan's offense to the back of her mind. "Little beauty, you also heard it just now, right? Your master doesn't want you anymore, so come with me obediently. I promise that you'll be as happy as a deity in a while, and you'll forget about your master in the blink of an eye." Li Weiran lowered his head and didn't say anything. She coldly snorted, the fat on her face trembling. "If you don't listen today, no matter if it's you or your previous master, don't think about walking out of this ghost market alive." Li Weiran straightened his back slightly and finally said obediently, "I'll go with you." The crowd immediately burst into hisses. Some were sympathetic, some were envious, some were gloating, and some were pitying. Mayan hears the muffled sounds of discussion. "Look at how soft and tender this young man is. If he falls into Zhang Guihong's hands, he will be tormented miserably." Sigh, to think that his previous master was willing to let go of such a treasure. What can I do if I don't let go? Offending Zhang Guihong. Does he not want to live anymore? There are only a few men that Zhang Guihong fancies who can come out unscathed. Some time ago, there was also a very beautiful young man. In order to treat his father's illness, he had no choice but to sell himself to Zhang Guihong. As a result, when he was thrown out by the servants of the Zhang household, he was already completely unrecognizable. Chapter 3148. Alas, I've sinned. Mayan looks at the youngster's straight back and tightly pursed lips, as if he was stubborn and lonely. She doesn't know why her heart feels like it's being pricked. Of course, she knows that Li Weiran, this little pervert, won't lose out. But looking at this youngster, she feels like she's looking at another shadow. That shadow, vague and distant. Even if she breaks her head, she can't figure it out. But even if it's just a vague association that she can't figure out, it still makes Mayan very unhappy. So unhappy that she wants to chop off Zhang Guihong's fingers that are touching Li Weiran's face. But in the end, Zhang Guihong only smiles insolently and doesn't insist on holding Li Weiran in her arms. Because Zhang Guihong has just bought goods from the ghost market, no matter how careful she is, her hands are still covered in mud. And the youngster in front of her is dressed as white as snow, his skin like jade, so pure and holy that people can't bear to tarnish him. Even Zhang Guihong felt pity for her. She laughed and said, "Little beauty, be obedient and come with me. When we arrive at the mansion, we'll take a bath together. Then, I'll accompany you to make love." Along with the laughter, the flesh on his face trembles and the oil on his forehead glistens. It's really disgusting, but Li Weiran seems to have accepted it. He doesn't say anything and obediently follows behind Zhang Guihong. But when he passes by Mayan, he suddenly turns his head and shows a bashful smile. He suddenly tilts his head, revealing a bashful smile. In a low voice that only Mu Yin can hear, he says, "Mu Yin, you've gone too far. What I hate the most is being abandoned by others. I didn't expect that after cooking for you for so many days, I would be treated so ungrateful. Moreover, are you really willing to let me be defiled and humiliated by others?" Mayan rolls her eyes. "Big brother, that's enough. Are you addicted to acting?" She snorts coldly and uses her voice to say, "Haven't you been complaining about being bored these past few days? Now that I've given you this entertainment, are you satisfied?" Very satisfied. Mayan really understands me. So, in order to repay Mayan, I'll also prepare a big gift for you. Mayan's heart thumps. But without waiting for her to ask, Li Weiran has already left with Zhang Guihong. Mu Yin still doesn't dare to relax. Sure enough, Not long after, she felt the energy in her storage ring fluctuate. Then, 7 or 8 cloud bones fell from her sleeves. The crowd that was about to disperse suddenly stopped in their tracks. Everyone looked at the 7 or 8 cloud bones with a burning gaze. Cloud bone? Is it Yungu? It is indeed a cloud bone, and it is the most precious cloud spine bone of a cloud beast. Each cloud beast only gets a small piece. Who is this girl? With such a soft and tender kid by his side, he actually has so many cloud spine bones on him. 8 cloud spine bones means that you've killed at least 8 cloud beasts? Look at her frail and small appearance. How is that possible? Excited discussions, along with greedy and longing gazes, swarmed over from all directions. In the Xiojin continent, where Mu Yin used to live, most of the cultivators were very shrewd. Even if they wanted to embezzle other people's things, they would certainly scheme and find a dignified reason. But it was different for the people on the rocky hill. All of them were running around for survival, day and night. The only thought in their minds was to survive. How could they care about morality or shrewdness? Chapter 3149. As soon as they see the 8 cloud bones, they immediately rush over like hungry tigers pouncing on their prey. Mu Yan's fingers grasp the air, grabbing the cloud bones into her palm. Then, her figure flashes and she disappears. Hey, where did she go? That woman is very skilled. Damn, 8 cloud bones if we can get one. Our whole family won't have to starve for the next year. That stinking woman actually ran away. The crowd unwillingly disperse. Even if they know that Mu Yan's strength isn't simple. But in order to survive, in order to snatch resources, they will still risk their lives. But now that she's run away, these people don't show any unusual behavior other than cursing a few sentences. That's because this kind of robbery and failure is too normal for them. They simply don't have time to complain and have no choice but to throw themselves into a new struggle to survive. In the corner of the alley, there's a short, thinly dressed teenager. Looking at the place where Mu Yin disappeared, he slowly bites his lips, his eyes revealing a burning light. After getting rid of the crowd, Mu Yin doesn't leave the ghost market. Instead, she makes a detour and swaggers in from another entrance. This time, Mu Yin didn't have the glaring presence of Li Weiran. She found an inn without a hitch and took a nice bath. There are inns in the ghost market. But compared to the inn that Mu Yin used to live in, this place can simply be described as a refugee cave. And the clean water that the inn can provide is also very little. In fact, there's an extreme lack of water in the gravel hill. Mu Yin has been in Mount Yinluo for so long, but she's only seen a muddy, semi-swampy lake. It's full of amphibious cloud beasts, and the water inside is dirty and smelly. She can't take a bath, and the amount of spiritual power that Mu Yin can use is very little. She can condense some water to eat and drink. But taking a bath is absolutely not enough. When the innkeeper first heard that Mu Yin wants water, he was very reluctant. Until Mu Yin takes out ordinary cloud bones and cloud beast skin, he immediately agrees with ecstasy. In his words, his attitude towards Mayan has changed from being careless at the beginning to one of extreme reverence. Mu Yin drives the innkeeper out, and with the pitiful water that she can condense, she washes the blood and mud off her body. For a moment, it's as if she's reborn. She couldn't imagine how they had survived those stinky, greasy days. Thankfully, Li Weiran and Little Chick didn't mind. Li Weiran. Mu Yin can't help but grit her teeth at the thought of the youth with the red silk covering his eyes. Squeak, squeak, squeak. The little chick rolled out of the space and crashed into Mu Yan's arms. Ayo, ayo, ayo. G, G, G. Huang Wang loved Xiangxiang's mother the most. Mayan strokes its head. How is the Tian Mo Chin space? Are Chi Huang and Little Phoenix all right? The environment of this rocky hill was unique. Her divine sense connection with the Tian Mo Chin space is almost completely severed. Therefore, she could only put Lin Yungu in an ordinary storage space. Guji, 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 Guji. Brother Red Underpants was playing chess, ignoring Huang Huang. Little Ball was sleeping, and Huang Huang was bored, so it came to find its mother. The little chick looked around. Squawk, squawk, squawk. Mummy, mummy, where's Brother Blindfold? Huang Huang wanted to eat Brother Blindfolded's cooking. Mayan's hand on the little chick's head pauses. That scene that made her unhappy resurfaces in her mind. That Zhang mansion, it should have been demolished by him by now, right? Chapter 3150. Mayan mutters to herself as she puts her scattered hair into a man's bun. Soon, a handsome young man comes out. But Mayan's eyebrows are too charming. Even if she doesn't have any makeup on her face or jewelry on her head, she's still dazzling and captivating. Since she doesn't have any tools to change her appearance, Mayan has no choice but to use her bone hands to carve an ugly mask and put it on. Guji, little Inghua tilts his head and looks at Mayan in confusion. He doesn't understand why his mother would use such an ugly mask to cover her beautiful face. But it doesn't matter. It's great that his mother has turned back into her fragrant self. But what about the blindfolded brother in white? Huang Huang is hungry and wants to eat delicious barbecue. Thus, little Inghua rubs against Mayan's palm and asks again, "You're a chicken. It's fine if you don't eat bugs or grains, but why are you pickier than me?" Mayan pokes little Inghua's head, making its round body sway. "Do you really want to find that little pervert? Go, go, go. Barbecue. Delicious. Soup is even more delicious. Blindfolded brother is the best." Damn it. He was making her hungry. "That's what you said. You're the one who told me to go find him." Little Inghua tilts his head. Ahem. Mayan coughs. "Forget it. I'll do a good deed that day. It wouldn't be good if this little pervert massacred his entire family." Zhang Guihong and her group quickly return to her mansion after taking Li Weiren away. It's a courtyard with 4 entrances, all made of green bricks. It can't be compared to the richly ornamented palaces in the Xiuzhen mainland. But there's already a mansion in the middle of the gravel hill. Zhang Guihong proudly shows off to Li Weiren. "Now you know how wise of choice it was to follow me." Li Weiren quietly sits on a wooden chair, slightly tilting his head to look out the window without saying a word. Even though this reaction is very rude. But the youngster's side profile is as perfect as a poem or a painting. The anger that Zhang Guihong was about to explode was dispelled unconsciously. She waves her hand. "Prepare a bathtub for this lady. Beauty, let's go. I'll take you to a couple bath." As Zhang Guihong spoke, she stretched out her fat hand. However, Li Weiren didn't move. It was as if she didn't exist. Zhang Guihong's face darkened bit by bit. "It seems that you still don't know your own identity and situation. He's just a boy toy. Don't be so shameless." Suddenly, she raised her hand and patted it. "Men, let the new beauty see the consequences of resisting me." Zhang Guihong. Li Weiren finally retracted his gaze from the door. He waited with interest to see what Zhang Guihong wanted him to see. Not long after, the servants of the Zhang residence dragged a few naked people over. There were both men and women in this group. Every one of them had outstanding looks in the area of shattered rock. However, every single one of them was riddled with wounds and was in an extremely miserable state. "Sister Hong, I know I was wrong. I'm willing to serve you. Please forgive me. Kill me. Kill me. I really can't take it anymore." When these people saw Zhang Guihong, they immediately cried and begged. Their expressions were indescribably humble and hopeless. Becoming a pet to serve an ugly and fat woman was equivalent to stepping on their dignity in the mud. Chapter 3151. But these people were fighting to be the first to beg for this kind of humiliation and trampling. It was clear what kind of terrifying torture they had been through. Li Weiren quietly looked at these people who were begging for mercy. His lips unknowingly curled up. The scenery and people in the room were reflected in his eyes through the red silk, as if they were dyed in a layer of bloodthirsty red. How interesting. These lowly, ant-like people struggling to survive. What was the point of them living? He might as well free them. Suddenly, a figure jumped up from the ground and pounced toward Zhang Guihong. "Vicious woman, I'll kill you." A cold light flashed, and the sharp blade was about to pierce into Zhang Guihong's chest. Zhang Guihong lifted her leg and kicked. Crack! The sound of bones breaking rang out. The figure fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood, unable to get up again. But even so, this woman still stared at Zhang Guihong fiercely, her eyes filled with intense hatred. Yes, this was a woman. Moreover, it was a woman with snow-white skin and an outstanding appearance. Zhang Guihong searched for beauties everywhere. Not only handsome men, but even beautiful women were also targets for her to defile. The woman was already on her last breath, but she still gritted her teeth and said, "Zhang Guihong, you vicious woman, in order to take me by force, you didn't even let my husband and infant son go. Zhang Guihong, you will get what you deserve. You will definitely get what you deserve." Zhang Guihong's face darkened as she stepped forward and ruthlessly stepped on the woman's face. The woman immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. "Shameless slut, it's your honor that I like you. Do you want to go to hell to reunite with your husband and son? Hee hee, I won't let you get what you want. You dare to resist me. Just wait to be tortured to death in the mansion. Ha ha!" Zhang Guihong laughed so hard that the flesh on her face was trembling. She turned to look at Li Weiran, hoping to see the noble and pure youth reveal a panicked and pleading expression. But Zhang Guihong was disappointed. The youth in front of her was still calm and obedient. His lips even curled up into a faint smile, without a hint of fear. Zhang Guihong frowned unhappily. "Little blind, don't be so ungrateful." It was the male pet behind Zhang Guihong, who was used to bootlicking. Do you know that these people had a good ending? Those who were truly despised by Sister Hong were all given to the servants of the Zhang residence. Look at your soft and tender skin. What kind of torture will you suffer when the time comes? Have you thought about it clearly? Li Weiran slowly stood up. Hee hee, that's right? As long as you listen to me, I won't mistreat you. His thin lips moved, and the young man's clear and pleasant voice rang out. There was once a person who told me to obediently wait for her, and that she would come back to pick me up. But in the end, she didn't come back. So in this life, what I hate the most is... His voice paused, and Li Weiran tilted his head in confusion. Strange, why would you remember something from so long ago? These are the last things I want to remember. He slowly turned his head and looked at Zhang Guihong and his male pet. The smile on his face became brighter and brighter. Every time I think about it, I will tremble in fear and also hate to the point of going crazy. Zhang Guihong felt a strange chill run down her spine. Chapter 3152. Zhang Guihong inexplicably feels a chill all over her body, shivering. It's like a poisonous snake has suddenly climbed up her back, wrapping around her neck, able to take her life at any time. But she quickly shakes her head, throwing away that inexplicable fear. Her plump hands reach towards Li Weiran's face, her mouth saying, "Little beauty, are you scared? Don't be afraid, come into my arms." The scarlet light is faintly discernible behind the red silk. The moment it's about to explode, suddenly, a sword light descends from the sky. The wretched expression on Zhang Guihong's face has yet to recede. A line of blood slowly appears from the top of her head, gradually spreading to her face, neck, and body. Bang! There's a loud noise. Boiling hot blood sprays out, splashing all over Li Weiran's face and body. The entire courtyard falls into a deathly silence. Everyone's eyes slowly fell on the front. After Zhang Guihong's body split in half, the figure of a masked girl appears. This person is wearing men's clothing and has a man's bun, but her figure is slim and slender, and her grace is outstanding. The translucent sword in her hand flickers, contrasting against her exquisite skin that is like white porcelain and beautiful jade. Only that face is mostly covered by an extremely ugly mask. Even so, it can be seen that this is definitely a woman, and an exceptionally beautiful girl at that. But at this moment, this beautiful girl has killed Zhang Guihong, killing the daughter of the mountain-splitting sect's outer sect steward. The first to react is Zhang Guihong's male pet, his face full of horror. Kill. Murder. She killed Hong Jie. The hysterical shout is sharp and shrill, like a sharp object is poking into the ear. Mu Yin frowns, waving her hand, and a sword light slashes out. The male pet softly fell to the ground. Quickly catch her. The young lady has been killed. If we can't catch the murderer, Master will never let us off. Someone come. Catch the assassin. Zhang Guihong's subordinates roar, and a tide of people immediately rushes over from all directions. However, these people's fighting strength can't even compare to the lowest-level cloud beast. How could Mu Yin take it to heart? Therefore, only took her a quarter of an hour to get rid of these small fries. Not a single one of them could withstand a single move from her. In the beginning, Mu Yin actually held back. Other than Zhang Gong, who was directly beheaded, the rest of the Zhang residence's servants were knocked unconscious with the back of their blades, until she saw the men and women who were captured and tortured by Zhang Guihong. The killing intent in his eyes finally materialized into ice. Even in a world like Gravel Hill where the strong preyed on the weak, this kind of trash doesn't deserve to be called human. Floating like a dream resounded in the entire Zhang mansion. Even though she could only use a small amount of spiritual power now, it was still a piece of cake for her to control these mortals who had no cultivation. After a while, everyone in the residence, except for Li Weiran, entered dreamland. Those who were captured and humiliated by Zhang Guihong found redemption in the dream, and their injuries gradually healed. As for the servants of the Zhang mansion, those minions who helped Zhang Guihong in her evil deeds, they were now trapped in an endless nightmare. They would be tortured in nightmares and lose their lifespan. When they woke up, even if they didn't die of old age, their hair would be white, and it would be hard for them to live again. Mu Yin puts away her zither and turns to leave. Li Weiran's calm voice comes from behind. Zhu Mu Yin, what are you doing here? Chapter 31:53. Mu Yin turns to look at the youth. When she saw that his head and face were covered in blood, she couldn't help but curl up the corners of her mouth. He was no longer as holy and perfect as he usually was. What are you doing here? Of course I'm here to help the people get rid of the scourge. He glanced at the people who were tortured by Zhang Guihong, especially the woman who was on the verge of death. Mu Yin crouches down and stuffs a pill into her mouth. Then he stood up and said, I'll kill this kind of scum. Is there a problem? With that, she didn't wait for Li Weiran's response and turned to leave. However, as soon as he stepped out of the Zhang mansion, the people behind him followed him. Li Weiran's voice carried a hint of laughter. Zhu Mayan, admit it. You just can't bear to see me being defiled. Mu Yin rolls her eyes. You pervert. It's good enough that you don't defile people. I'm still worried that you'll be defiled. Do you think I'm an idiot? Worry leads to confusion. Maybe you've fallen for me. Mu Yin stops and turns to stare at him. At this time, the girl had already washed away the dirt on her face and body, restoring her original appearance. Even an ugly mask couldn't hide his peerless elegance. Li Weiran's breathing became chaotic for a moment, but it was only for a moment before his lips curled into a faint smile. What are you looking at me for? Could it be that Mayan has really fallen for me? Even if the red silk covered her face, and she didn't have the most captivating pair of eyes, she still appeared so charming and alluring. However, Mu Yan's next sentence, his seductive expression froze. Let's see how thick your skin is. You're not even blushing when you say such sentimental words. Were you the reincarnation of a daffodil in your past life? With that, Mayan throws him a mocking look, then turns around and walks away. But very quickly, Li Weiran caught up. What is a daffodil? Why do you say that I'm the reincarnation of Narcissus? Narcissism represented narcissism. This is what Mu Yin heard from Bai Xie. Of course, Li Weiran didn't know. Mu Yin is also not interested in explaining to him. Thus, this fellow had repeated it 800 times in her ears along the way. You said daffodils are flowers? Why have I never seen this flower before? There are flowers in the world that I haven't seen? That's impossible. I've seen all the flowers in the world. Why don't you show me the narcissus? Mu Yin couldn't take it anymore. Li Weiran, that's enough. She had never seen a daffodil before, so where was she going to get one? Li Weiran said calmly, "But I'm really curious. There is no flower in the world that I have not seen. Muyin, what exactly is this daffodil you're talking about? I really want to see it." Pausing for a moment, the young man leaned forward slightly and said in a cold and gloomy voice, "I'm a person who will definitely get what I want. If I can't get it, I'll stop at nothing and stop at nothing." Muyin, are you afraid? Muyin coldly glances at him and sneers. "You said that there's no flower in this world that you haven't seen." "Of course," Li Weiran said confidently. "There are records of all the strange flowers in the world. Whether it's the Yinwu continent, the Xioshan continent, or even the floating island, as long as it's a flower recorded in the ancient books, I've definitely seen it." Not only had he seen it, he had even planted it himself. Except, Li Weiran's voice just fell when he saw Mu Yan's face slightly pale. Fine beads of sweat seeped out from her forehead. Then, a jade box slowly appeared in her palm. Chapter 31:54. On top of the jade box, there was a little yellow chick with its head tilted to one side, its ahogue twitching as it dozed off. Feeling the cold wind outside, the little chick opened its eyes. Seeing Li Weiran in front of it, it immediately began to squawk. "Brother Blindfold, Huang Huang is hungry. I want some roast meat. I want to drink soup." Li Weiran didn't understand the little chick's words, but he vaguely felt that this little chick wasn't simple. However, his attention wasn't on the little chick, but the jade box in Mu Yan's hand. He doesn't understand why Mayan would suddenly take out a jade box. Could it be that the daffodil she mentioned was inside? "You said you've seen all the flowers in the world," Mu Yin said lightly. "Then have you seen this dark cloud's spirit flower before?" The pupils of the eyes behind the red silk suddenly shrank. Li Weiran's entire body stiffened. His hands that were originally hanging by his side unconsciously clenched into fists. At this moment, he almost wanted to tear off the red silk covering his eyes and take a closer look. Then he saw her slender fingers slowly open the jade box in front of him. Inside the jade box, there was a translucent flower that emitted a faint pink and icy blue light, quietly lying inside. Because the lid of the box was lifted, the foul air from the outside came in. The delicate petals trembled as if they would melt at any moment. But Muyin simply gathers spiritual power on her fingertips and wraps it up. The flower immediately regained her calm and demure demeanor. Even the pink stamen in the center gently swayed, rubbing against Mayan's fingers, seemingly incomparably intimate. Mayan also hooks her finger and touches the stamen, then closes the jade box. The seed of the dark cloud spirit flower was given to her by Deming Ju on the Yinwu continent a long time ago. At that time, Deming Ju tricked her into planting the dark cloud spirit flower in 7 days. In fact, his main purpose was to keep her in the mansion and cultivate feelings for her. As for whether the dark cloud spirit flower could really be grown by Mayan, even Deming Ju had never thought about it. This was because this kind of dark cloud spirit flower wasn't precious or useful to the cultivators of the cultivation continent. Its only use was to refine pills that could help those without spiritual roots to form their spiritual meridians. But it was precisely this worthless dark cloud spirit flower that no one had managed to grow in thousands of years. The dark cloud spirit flower was also known as the 7 days flower. It only took 7 days for the seeds to germinate, bloom, and wilt. However, no matter how powerful a spirit plant master was, they would at most last until the 5th day of planting the dark cloud spirit flower. Previously, Deming Ju gave Mayan 7 seeds. Muyin also managed to grow 4 flowers with great difficulty, but they were all refined into pills. But Mayan really likes this dark cloud spirit flower. Therefore, after entering the cultivation world, he tried to raise another one. This time, she succeeded again, and she finally knew why the dark cloud spirit flower was so hard to raise. Because the dark cloud spirit flower was simply too pure. It couldn't be corroded by any impure energy. No matter how pure a person's spirit root was, it was impossible for their body to be free of impurities. Only Mayan's stainless body, her unique moon's spiritual root, coupled with her Shun musician skills, can raise this delicate 7 days flower. Mu Yin raised her head to look at Li Weiran, who was completely stiff. She curled her lips and thought to herself, "Little guy, you dare to fight with me?" He smiled and said, "You've never seen this dark cloud spirit flower before, right? That's why, in this world, there's always someone better. There's always someone better. You don't know what's so rare about a daffodil." Saying that, she closed the jade box. But before she could move, she saw Li Weiran suddenly pouncing over. His target was the dark cloud spirit flower in her hand. Chapter 31:55. Mu Yan's eyes were sharp, and her hands were fast. She quickly dodged it and managed to prevent the jade box from falling. She couldn't help but be angry. "Li Weiran, what are you doing? Is this really a dark cloud spirit flower?" Li Weiran's voice was a little hoarse. "Let me take another look. I don't believe that anyone in this world can grow a dark cloud spirit flower." Mu Yan sneered and put the dark cloud's spirit flower into her storage space. "Wait." Li Weiran grabbed her sleeve. "Can you give me this dark cloud spirit flower? No matter what reward you want, as long as you give me this dark cloud spirit flower, I'm willing to pay." Mu Yin then realized that Li Weiran's expression wasn't quite right. His face was excessively pale. His hands, which were gripping his sleeves, were trembling slightly. The cold sweat in his palms had soaked his clothes, forming a puddle of water. Mu Yin looked at him suspiciously. "Is the dark cloud's spirit flower important to you? This thing has no use other than to help mortals reconstruct their spiritual veins. Your cultivation is much higher than mine now. What do you want this for? This has nothing to do with you." Li Weiran clenched his fists. Even with his eyes covered, one could see his twisted expression. "Are you going to give me the dark cloud spirit flower or not?" Mu Yin sneered and crossed her arms. "What? You want to threaten me again? Believe it or not, even if you kill me, you won't get the dark cloud spirit flower." The murderous aura around her suddenly overflowed. A bone-chilling wind swirled in the air, curling her clothes and hair. Mu Yin was on guard, the 7 absolute swords faintly discernible in her palm. In the next moment, Li Weiran retracted all his murderous aura and revealed a pitiful expression. "The dark cloud spirit flower is really important to me. Mu Yin, let me take another look. Just one look, okay?" Mu Yan's personality had always been amenable to coaxing, but not coercion. When Li Weiran threatened her just now, she would rather fight to the death. But now that Li Weiran revealed such a pitiful and pleading expression, even though she knew that this guy was wearing a mask, her heart still softened. Forget it, seeing that this guy had been cooking for her and Huang for so many days. In the end, Mu Yin opens the jade box again. The flower in the box seemed to be made of ice crystals and was dyed with the pure blue of the sky, adorned with delicate pink stamens. At this time, under the nourishment of Mayan's spiritual power, it exudes a lustrous jade-like luster. It's so beautiful that it simply doesn't seem like a mortal object. Mayan sees Li Weiran staring blankly at the dark cloud spirit flower in the jade box. 2 lines of clear tears fall from his eyes. For a moment, they were dumbfounded. "Holy shit, Li Weiran, this little pervert, actually cried. It was just a flower. Why was he crying?" After a long while, Mu Yin dryly says, "It's not that I'm stingy and unwilling to give you the flower. It's just that this dark cloud spirit flower originally only has a lifespan of 7 days. It needs to be nourished by my spiritual power every day in order to survive. Even if you manage to get past it, if the dark cloud spirit flower doesn't like your spiritual energy, it will quickly wither." Li Weiran suddenly reached out his hand and touched the stamen of the dark cloud's spiritual flower with his fingertip. A faint red spiritual energy slowly appeared. "Damn, Mayan curses. Do you want to kill it?" This brat was actually pouring spirit energy into the dark cloud's spirit flower. To the dark cloud's spirit flower, the impure spiritual energy wasn't nourishment, but a talisman of death. Just like that time in the Yenwu continent, when Sure Lamling's maid touched it and caused it to die. But in the next moment, something miraculous happened. The dark cloud spirit flower actually didn't die. Chapter 3156. Not only did it not die, but the stamen even reddened a little. As for this delicate and picky little flower, although she doesn't have the same desire and intimacy towards Li Weiran's touch as she does towards Mu Yin, she doesn't reject it either. In this kind of situation, ever since Mu Yin raised the fifth dark cloud spirit flower, he had only encountered two exceptions. One is Di Mingju. One was Little Treasure. Only when the two of them touched the dark cloud spirit flower would it not be polluted and wither. And now, there was another Li Weiran. How could this be? What's so special about this Li Weiran? Just as he was feeling bewildered, he saw Li Weiran raise his head. His burning gaze of anticipation could be felt even through the red silk. You said it's not that you're stingy, but that you're afraid the dark cloud's spirit flower will wither. But you can't see it now. So, can you sell the dark cloud spirit flower to me? Mayan's heart is stifled for a moment. Gritting her teeth, she says, "What do you want the dark cloud spirit flower for?" Li Weiran was silent for a moment before he slowly said, "Nothing much. I just want it." He had yearned for it for hundreds of years, and he had also tried for hundreds of years. Day and night, he had yearned for this flower that was already useless to him. Mayan slaps the jade box shut and puts it back into the storage ring without hesitation. She throws two words at Li Weiran, "Not giving." Why? Since you're useless, why should I give it to you? Is it a waste? It's useless even if you keep it. Can I just like to raise it to look good? June Mayan, is there such a heartless woman like you? Scram, is there a man as unreasonable as you? The two of them bickered all the way back to the ghost market. Of course, this time, he doesn't choose to enter from the entrance where he met Zhang Guihong. Instead, he enters from the west gate, which is very close to the inn that Mayan has booked. According to the Guo brothers, other than the trading of food, weapons, and flesh, there are also many places to trade information. Right now, Mayan's most urgent task is to leave the gravel hill. Here, 90% of her spiritual power is sealed. She can't use the Tian Mo Qin at will, and her connection with seven brilliance in the space is almost completely cut off. Previously, when she took out a jade box containing the dark cloud spirit flower from the Tian Mo Qin space, it took a Herculean effort. Most importantly, the barrier and magnetic field around the rocky mound were extremely strange. The void spirit ring on her hand can communicate with Di Mingju's soul. It was as if it had been sealed. Di Mingju still doesn't know that she has come to the floating island. However, as long as he had the void spirit ring, he would be able to sense his location. Now that the void spirit ring has lost its effectiveness, Di Mingju and Xiao Bao will know that he's missing. How worried should they be? Therefore, she had to find a way to leave the gravel hill as soon as possible. Leave the rocky hill. Upon hearing her question, Lai Laosan, who sold information, was shocked at first, then laughed out loud. Are you dreaming? Haven't you heard that for thousands of years, crushed rock has only allowed entry and no exit? Even the spirit masters of the mountain-splitting sect who had come to punish the sinners could only stay here for a few hours at most. Otherwise, it was very possible that they would never be able to leave. As for us, we don't have the mark of a beast's soul on us. As long as we get close to the boundary of the rocky hill, we will be completely crushed. He was born a piece of trash in crushed rock hill, so he will be a piece of trash for the rest of his life. In the past, it's not like there weren't descendants of foreign spirit masters like you who wanted to break through the barrier and leave this place. But in the end, all of them ended up with their heads separated from their bodies. I advise you to give up on this idea. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.